Hello, everyone. This is your Right Geek, Honorary Man King, and leader of the Awkward Cough Squad. I have laryngitis today, so that's why my voice sounds a little bit different. But don't worry, I don't have the beer bug or anything else dangerous. I'm here again with my usual guest, number one Marmaduke fan, and Punch Machine. And this time we're going to be talking about the new Iron Man comics, otherwise known as the new Iron Man disaster. As I said here, my subtitle, Can't Write Well, now shows up first in my reading pad's predictive test when I type can't. Let's discuss why. I actually stole Can't Write Well from Wes at Thinking Critical. I definitely recommend his channel. It's very good. He's got videos up every day. He's a good commentator, so definitely check him out if you can. When he used Can't Write Well once in a video, I was like, oh, I'm stealing that, and I'm going to abuse the hell out of that because that's just perfect. I've also seen people online call him Can't Do Anything Well, but Can't Write Well is pretty good. All right, so Marmaduke fan and Punch, how are you today?
Doing all right.
Well, I think my PFP here kind of sums it up. So
thanks, I hate it. Yeah. Now, I want to start off at the start by saying that this is, from my perspective, this is not me just, rubbernecking at a really bad comic. Although that's kind of a fun activity. We all have our vices. But I've been keeping up with this because I honestly wanted this to be good. And I wanted to give it a chance to become something good. And you're going to see sprinkled throughout here that every once in a while I will say, oh, I actually like this part, or this was pretty good, or he was trying to do something good here, right? So I'm not coming at this as I just want to trash a comic that I have no investment in. I have a lot of investment in this. I really wanted it to be good. When the run was first announced, and the copy mentioned in particular that we were going, quote, back to basics, that was actually something I was potentially excited about, right? So my perspective, at least, is as an Iron Man fan that really wanted to have a good Iron Man comic for once. And so I was early on, especially, and you can go back and look at my old videos. If you look for the playlist, Cantwell's Iron Man Run on my channel, you'll see that in a lot of those videos, I do acknowledge things that I thought were good, or things that had the potential to be good if they could be further developed. So again, I'm not just someone who's just looking for a bad comic to roast. This is coming from a place of sincere interest in actually having a good Iron Man comic for once in our lives. So I just want to get that out there right away. All right, so what I actually started my presentation on is what actually happened right before this run that has some bearing on how this run could have been written. So first of all, we had Civil War II, which is cringe. I don't recommend it. But during that event, Tony is actually murdered by Captain Marvel. And he exists as an AI for a while until he builds himself a new body. After that, we had Dan Slott's Tony Stark Iron Man run. So this is dealing with Tony in his new body, but during this run, he still has doubts that he's actually a real human with a real human soul anymore, which could have been an interesting theme to explore. Unfortunately, Slott is not a very good writer either, so he didn't handle this questioning especially well. Instead, we got the Iron Man 2020 event, which was bad enough that even Perch, who is notorious for being very middle of the road, even he was doing a whole series of videos talking about how bad this was. So that's why I wrote, don't ask, this is cringe too. And basically, the idea of this event is that Tony leads a terroristic robot revolution against his adopted brother Arno Stark. Don't ask, it's cringe too. During this plot, Tony realizes he is in fact the real Tony in a perfunctory scene that doesn't, in my opinion, feel earned. So that's kind of what's been going on up to when Cantwell's run starts. Oh, and also throughout the slot one run, Tony was dating Janet, the Wasp, which I actually thought worked pretty well. I think pairing Tony with another superhero would kind of get around the, oh no, would the girlfriend actually understand the superhero life? Well, yeah, she would, because she is too. And I also felt like Janet actually genuinely liked Tony, which, so it worked. But of course, Cantwell is not going to persist with that particular pairing, as we'll see momentarily. So here's the first issue. Now, my previous videos have covered some of this already, but I'm going to go over it again to give Punch a chance to comment if he so chooses.
Oh God, disavow.
Fun time for you.
I'd like to disavow. Yeah, you guys have already covered this first few issues of the run, right? In previous.
Yeah, we did. We got up to like 9 or 10, I think. Yeah.
That needs iron in his diet, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. I mean, we can run through it if you want, but I actually just had a quick question for you, right, Geek?
Sure.
So because I haven't read any of the prequel stuff, so basically you're saying that Tony Stark is now Bender from Futurama. Is that what I'm getting? He's some kind of.
I mean, the alcoholism would dovetail perfectly with Tony's character for Bender.
He's drunken, evil, maladaptive robot man.
Well, what I would call him more like a clone of himself. Because he's not technically a robot, because he's got he's got a biological body that was reconstructed with his DNA. So, but obviously the metaphysics of that, if we were really going to address this in terms of genuine metaphysics, we would say, no, this isn't Tony anymore, right?
Well, is it though? I mean, the Tony of Theseus, I guess.
If there's no soul, and you just reconstruct the atoms and you live in a materialistic universe, which I guess would be an actual question for Cantwell based on some of the panels, but.
Yeah, well, actually, because that's interesting that you bring that up, because I mean, he doesn't get into it through most of the run, but then in what was it, like 14 or 15 or whatever, when he suddenly decides to go into God mode or whatever, it does start kind of hinting at things like that. It doesn't really go anywhere, but I'm wondering if maybe Cantwell was trying to reference that. I mean, do you think, or is it just a coincidence?
I think it's possible. Since Slott really kind of left that theme hanging there without really fully addressing it. So it's possible he was trying to reference that.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll go through these quickly. So in the first issue, Tony basically quits the board of Stark Unlimited, sells off his shares in Same, and puts his mansion on the market. He also cuts ties with his old business associates. Essentially, he's abandoning his old life entirely. In fact, he and Janet break up. Cantwell basically discards Janet in favor of Patsy without offering any explanation. He moves into a brownstone in New York City, and all he's got there basically is a mattress on the floor. He buys a car and enters an unofficial drag race and loses. He meets up with Patsy at his going away party and shows her his new simplified armor, which I actually like. Patsy immediately starts chiding him for being an EU maniac. It literally starts in issue 1. Karvak is introduced in the guise of a tech bro interested in catching lightning. And Tony, at the end, Tony catches the unicorn stealing a Gutenberg Bible. That's basically the bullet points of what happens in the first issue. This is basically the breakup with Janet. It's in its entirety. It's basically 2 panels. I've moved on. I think it's what's best. Tony says, I agree. Anyway, take care. You too, Janet. The end.
You don't understand. I have to get Iron Man with my Patsy Walker waifu. It's my one true caring ship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I don't really understand because they have had some interaction in prior Avengers comics, but not the sort of interaction that would make one immediately think, oh my gosh, they obviously should be together. They're just the perfect couple, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, but you're trying to think about this logically, right? I mean, you're not thinking about it like Cantwell. Cantwell's just, it's sometimes the heart just wants what the heart wants, right? There's no rhyme or reason to it.
Yes.
He likes Hellcat. He decides he wants to write about Hellcat. So
yeah,
there we go.
Yeah. But anyway, I resent this because I like Janet. She's actually a really good character. I like how Janet, the thing about Janet is she's the girl's girl. Like, she's a fashion designer. She likes going shopping and looking pretty and all of that. She's very girly, but she's also very smart and very capable and has led the Avengers team on several occasions in a very competent way. So I like what I like about that character is that they have put together the competence with the girlness of the character, which is so different from today's girl boss characters, which are just made basically men with tits instead of actually letting them be actual women, right?
Well, I mean, very small tits. So.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, they do draw them with smaller kind of tits and manlier features. So they even take away the tits. But anyway, Janet gets to have her tits. She gets to be a girl while at the same time also being a competent, heroic character. So I like her. I wish they could have kept her. But, as you say, Cantwell wanted to push her out of the way so that he could use Patsy as his waifu, essentially. Okay, so right away in issue 1, Patsy starts in with the nagging. Tony, with love, this new humility you've got going on, it's still your ego, just in different clothes. Then we have this. This is him talking to the news reporter. Machines should be building machines now. We need to remember what it's like to be human. Honestly, I need to get back to my roots. So I observed this kind of soul searching is abandoned fairly quickly, but it might have led to something genuinely good, because we really are due for a street level story. One of the problems with Marvel in recent years is that everything's got to be an event. Everything's got to be the entire world or even universe is at stake. Everything's got to be people are throwing planets at each other. Now we never get back down to the human element, which the older comics were still retaining the human. They were still retaining we're just going to help that poor woman whose cat is stuck in a tree, or we're going to help the lady whose car has broken down on the side of the road. That's kind of disappeared from modern comics, and that's something that we really do need to bring back. If that's what the story had turned out to be, I think I would have liked it better. As a matter of fact, this was something I wrote on my blog. I wanted to see barefoot, grease-covered Tony using his primitive AF armor to, I don't know, defend a struggling neighborhood from a gang of street-level villains, which he absolutely would do. See also his halfway houses, his philanthropic foundations, his orphan snuggling, etc., while also assisting stranded motorists, rescuing tree cats, and, of course, working on his capital I issues. Granted, this sort of story doesn't have quite the same flash as a fight over Galactus's leftover toys, but that doesn't mean it can't be profound and compelling in the hands of a genuinely talented writer. I hate to keep belaboring the point, but the very best issue of Iron Man, in my opinion anyway, has no universal stakes. All it features is a life-threatening blizzard and a homeless alcoholic, i.e. Tony, struggling to find a reason to continue living. So we are due for that sort of human scale story. And the fact that this story, although it was advertised as being a story that was going to go, quote, back to basics, the fact that it didn't, that it became yet another cosmic level event, is one of the many things that disappoints me about this run. Now I'm gonna let you gentlemen talk if you would like to.
You mean that advertisements are a good guideline for what I can expect when I go into a modern comic, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, in theory, they should be. I guess it's the question of is versus ought in this case. But yeah. I mean, seeing as this is my first time through the first ones, I guess I'll take point on this one. Are we allowed to skip ahead, right, like to the end here? Because it's interesting that you bring up this idea of the street level comic versus what we get. Because I remember going up to like what's his name, Kovac, the
Korvac.
Yeah, Korvac or whatever his name is, Bowser, right? He goes and he fights Bowser, and they turn into literal gods, and they're beating each other up with stars at one point. Like they blow up some poor demon guy's son, and like the thing that I was thinking while reading that was just a big yawn. Like, oh god, this is kind of boring. Like, whatever, they're blowing up suns. Yeah, so what? I wonder what else is going on. And like it shouldn't be like that when two gods are blowing up planets and throwing stars at each other. But I was thinking while I was reading that, like it would be so much more interesting just if there was a good story, but it was just smaller. Like I know we mentioned Star Wars before the stream, something like the Mandalorian, right? Like the whole Mandalorian effect, because that's a new Star Wars show that very self-consciously went and did like small street level stories, and it worked really well. Now with that said, I can see from that panel, right, especially in light of what you were just saying about Tony being an AI and then coming back as a human. The idea of having robots build robots and then him trying to reconnect with what it means to be human, right? Like that would actually be kind of a powerful idea, especially in light of what you've just described being the setup for this. But the thing is, again, like street level stories are going to suffer from the same problem, which is that we've got Catwell writing for it. So I'm not sure making a street level story would have worked much better. I probably would have enjoyed it a little bit more just because like a really bad street level story, right, with very low level stakes, isn't as impactful, right? Like when Tony's a god and he winds up blowing up Rhodey, then that's pretty bad. Like that's just like, oh god, ruins Iron Man for you. But if Tony's helping a little old lady across the street and it turns out Tony's a bit of a prick to her, right, then it's a bad Iron Man comic, but you can walk away from it with less of a puke taste in your mouth, I guess.
I think Cantwell confuses doing a thing in a story versus writing a story with a theme. So even in like the early issues, the theme of the story was Tony needs to get back to basics. So Cantwell has things happen like Tony posts on Twitter and people post images of fat Tony Stark at him and he gets butthurt about it and has to delete his Twitter account or something, right? So he knows that there's a theme to this story and he keeps trying to emphasize the theme, but then he'll discard that and go do the next thing. So Tony being back to basics is the theme of the first few issues. Tony and his mommy GF is the theme of the next batch of issues. I really like the part where Tony was just teleported off and had to fight Stiltman for a while. That was just like a little, good old. The bad guy took over the planet and lied to everybody, and then back to like the theme he's doing is, I'm going to do a thing about religion. I'm going to have Bible quotes. I'm going to have everybody Tony meets have some kind of religious mystical vibe to them. And it's like Tony's God complex is contrasted with the villain's God complex, which that's a lot of good stories do these kind of parallelisms, right? But I think Cantwell's so in love with his own parallelism that he's forgetting. He's forgetting to connect the mystical religious stuff to anything the characters are doing. I just feel like he might be making it up as he's going along.
You think?
You think? Yeah, so Warzord, welcome Warzord, asks, how about a mystery story for Tony? We could do that. I really think that this is something that Marvel will never do because Marvel is run by lizards. But I really want an Iron Man story where it's Iron Man versus the New World Order. But Marvel is never, ever going to do that. I'm going to have to write that myself because he being in the tech field and the engineering field, he is someone who is right in the middle of that milieu, so to speak. So he would be, the people that are around him would be the type of people who would be really attracted to, the World Economic Forum and stuff like that. And he might even be attracted to it at first, I would think, until he would discover exactly how sinister it is and how deep the conspiracy runs. But yeah, Marvel's not going to do that. That's something I'm never going to get. So,
well, old school Tony was specifically like a nationalist. Hey, we can't set up a council of international economists governing the world. Do you want to take people's freedom away?
Yeah. There was that page where he goes after them specifically for being NWO.
Yeah.
But Tony got a few fights to Bohemian Grove. Yeah, probably.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, the reason I would want to do what you were just mentioning, that one page in Denny O'Neil's run, is exactly the reason why I would want to do a story like that, because it would fit in with that, in particular, that one page. No, we can't go into other people's countries and tell them what to do. I believe in national sovereignty and the right of the individual, right? But yeah, the modern novel is just incapable of doing that kind of a story.
Again, you'd need writers who were motivated by stories like that. I was actually a little surprised. I mean, it wasn't specifically about the NWO, but the fact that Korvac was presented as kind of a commie god, right? Like trying to make everyone equal and woke, and that was presented as a bad thing. Right. That was actually a little bit encouraging. I don't know if it was accidental or if he was just sliding it in underneath the censors or what, but that was,
I think,
something.
I think Cantwell, it seems like Cantwell genuinely believes that putting yourself in the status of a god and manipulating people to achieve whatever utopian society you want is in fact a bad thing, because everyone who does that is viewed to be doing a bad thing textually. The problem with that is that the problem with this run is the characterization of Tony and the supposition that Tony would embrace something like that, when the only time that Tony is ever plus with people's is when he felt there was a genuine existential threat in play. Like, and he wouldn't just do it just for funsies, just to show off how smart he is. That's the real problem here.
I want to step into Cantwell's mindset for a bit. So I'm guessing in Cantwell's thinking, the idea is something like, well, if Tony is an egomaniac and Korvac is an egomaniac, it's not enough for Tony to just beat up Korvac in a fight, because Tony's just as bad as Korvac. So the bit he's doing is that Tony wins the fight and beats the bad guy and saves the day, but then Tony gets the power cosmic and Tony becomes the arrogant bad guy who's got a god complex and will rule the world. So it's sort of like this subverting expectations thing, where the audience expects that when you beat the bad guy, the day is set. Yeah. And I feel it's kind of like ugly about it is that's kind of the point of the hero's journey, right? Like, he defeats the monster, and by defeating the monster, he metaphorically defeats the monster within himself. So the twisteroo is Tony defeated the monster, but he didn't defeat the monster within himself. He was the real monster the whole time. What if the zombies aren't the monsters? What if we are the real monsters? That's the wet part at the end of the arc.
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting that you bring up the characterization, right, Geek? Because since we're doing like issue 1 and 2 and like these very early issues, I posted a whole bunch of stuff on Twitter like 2 weeks ago, I think, about all the various issues that I was finding with the characterization. I don't know if you screen capped it or if you put any of it in here, but I think, I mean, Warzord here, is asking about like a mystery story for Tony, and it's interesting that he brings that up, because I was thinking like Tony is basically Batman, right? Tony is the Marvel Comics version of Batman. Like he's Batman on like a physical level, right? Like he's the normal guy who uses his wits and the cool tech powers to beat the bad guys. He's got the Batman backstory where he's the billionaire and he's got the troubled past with the parents. But he's also Batman in the sort of social and emotional sense too. He's less of a hard ass than Batman, but he's the guy who pretends to be the billionaire playboy party guy, goes out and has fun. But then like deep inside, right, if you go and you meet Tony when he's not pretending, he's a completely different person, right? Or mostly different person.
He's just trying to cope with his childhood problems.
Yeah, it's a season cope, but who he isn't that billionaire playboy guy. The thing that was really striking me about these first few issues is that Tony is now just that billionaire playboy, right? Like his inner his inner personality, the person who he is, when the cameras are off, he feels like a spoiled teenager, right? Like a reckless a reckless teenager. Yeah. It's like I mean. I guess if I'm going to try and be nice, right? Like try and give Cantwell the benefit of the doubt. Maybe this is a reference to the fact that he used to be an AI and now he's a robot and now he's like a new person. Maybe either that or maybe Cantwell simply hasn't read enough Iron Man to realize that his personality isn't I'm a billionaire playboy who goes and has street races and recklessly kills people. I don't know if you got that clip, but there's several pages of Hellcat whining at Tony and talking about how his innovations kill people, and Tony's just like whatever, right? Just completely out of character for Tony. It would be in character if all I knew about Tony was, he's a rich billionaire playboy and He loves having money and having fun and banging sexy girls and doing all this stuff, right? But it isn't in character if you actually know who Tony is. So my main thinking here, right? Like I don't really know much about Can't Write Well. I did a little bit of reading up on him on Twitter. It seems as though he may have not read any Iron Man, or at least just skimmed through it and kind of missed.
It's like he read he read the Marvel wiki and picked up that, oh, this guy's an addict, or he had addiction issues in the past, and picked up some
read
other
the
things.
MCU wiki, even like he didn't even bother reading the comics wiki. He read the wiki for the cinema.
That's a comment I actually put in the presentation later. It seems like what Cantwell knows is like the most shallow interpretation of MCU Tony Stark, and that's what he's writing. Like, and the funny thing is that not even MCU Tony Stark is this person. Like, MCU Tony Stark is definitely a lot more of the playboy, right? But if you actually watch the movies in their entirety and you pay attention, you know that the playboy isn't all that MCU Tony Stark is either. So it's like some, it's basically what I'm saying is it's like the absolute surface level version of MCU Tony Stark, or it's Cantwell writing, what if Bill Gates was Tony Stark kind of thing. Like, what if an actual tech lizard was Tony Stark?
I'll have to disavow that.
Because the actual tech lizards in real life are the kind of guys that have no accountability for what they do. But it's definitely not Tony Stark as established in the 616, and it's not even really MCU Tony either. Although that's probably the closest approximation of what he's trying to do. So.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, it's not really Bill Gates so much as it is Justin Bieber. I think he's the Justin Bieber guy. Like it
Tony has a TikTok,
if he was just Bill Gates and was just kind of boring and evil and hurt people, but he's TikTok billionaire. So
yeah. So I had this slide up where I was saying that after everything that's happened recently in Marvel time, it would make sense for Tony to have a crisis of confidence and thus seek to retool his life. The problem is, in light of future events in the story, this quest for reinvention that he's telling the media about doesn't play as sincere, right? In fact, Cantwell's version of Tony immediately confirms the skepticism the public harbors regarding his stated desire to lead a more humble life. The assumption that's coming through here is that Tony can't be humble unless and until he is forced to be so by extreme circumstances. Basically, Cantwell assumes that Tony needs a comeuppance before his new humble life can begin. The problem with that is that it's bullshit. Tony has known how to be humble from the beginning. He has always recognized his mistakes and has submitted to the leadership of others. Is he perfect? No, but he's not wholly blind to his faults. And I grabbed some very, very early panels from Tales of Suspense of him thinking about how he made a mistake and needs to rethink how he's approaching something. So this one, the one on the left, is from an issue that I think we went over, Marm, where it was the Chameleon was the bad guy, and Tony ends up fighting the real Captain America by mistake, right? And it eventually sorts itself out. But at the end, we have him here in the thinker pose saying, I was too easily fooled. That was unpardonably careless of me. So here he's criticizing himself for his recent actions. And then here, I think we went over this one too, Marm, where there was an issue where he decided he didn't want to be Iron Man anymore because it was too much of a hassle. So he goes out to party instead. And then his friends are put in danger. So then he said, I've been selfish and self-centered. I have to make things right. So from early on, as Stan Lee conceived him, he has always recognized his mistakes and has submitted to the leadership of others. Is he perfect? No, but he's not wholly blind to his faults. And I was just I grabbed some very, very early panels from Tales of Suspense of him thinking about how he right? He was a character who had his flaws, who made mistakes, who was a human being, but he was able, when the mistakes were made, he was able to reflect upon them later and say, oh, I screwed up. I need to fix that. Or I need to change how I approach things. He's always had that capacity for humility and rethinking. He doesn't need to, kill all of his friends in a burst of God-powered rage to understand the mistake that he's making, right? It can really low-level common human mistakes actually prompts this sort of self-searching as well. So, or we can look at a scene that we covered in the last couple of streams, right? So in Denny O'Neil's run, this is after Tony has spent, a year in a drunken bender and left all of his friends and his company and everything in the lurch. And Rhodey is here basically manhandling him and throwing him to the floor. And the only way that Tony responds is to say, yeah, that's right, I did screw up. And he's willing to accept this pounding, right? So you tell me, would a guy who willingly accepts physical punishment for his best friend to atone for his flaws really need constant lecturing to stay on track?
He should be more mature at this stage in his life. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're perpetually resetting him to teenager level maturity.
Right. Yeah, so there's basically no sign. That's what really suggests that Cantwell hasn't read a lot of these early comics, is the fact that there's no sign that Tony has learned anything from any of the past experiences of his life. No progression at all. Like you said, they're just resetting him back to the immature teenager version of himself. Then we have issue 2.
I guess my question would be: was he ever was he ever really like that, like as a teenager? Because Tony always seems to have been too humble, right? Like that seems to have been his problem since he was a kid, right? Like he wasn't assertive enough, and he wasn't sort of self-confident enough, and that's why he needed to get the Iron Man suit in order to give himself confidence to go and be the hero, right? Like he's too sort of self-critical.
Yeah. So basically what happened is around 1998, when Kurt Busiek came in and started writing Iron Man, there was a little bit of a retcon that basically assumed that before Iron Man, BIM, Tony was actually a little bit of a prick, right? Okay. But that is certainly not how Stan Lee conceived of him, right? The way that he was written when Stan Lee was inventing this character is that no, he was actually, thoughtful and humble from the beginning. He was just perceived to be this careless playboy because that was the persona that he was putting forward to the public, right? But that was not actually what he was inside. So what we have here is we have conflicting interpretations going on.
Okay. All right. So yeah, I guess it's still really bad though. Because this is supposed to be the same Tony Stark as from all the previous comics, right? Like this is the main continuity Tony.
Yes, this is.
Right. Yeah. At this point in his life, there's no excuse for reverting to teenage angst.
Right.
And one thing that I was thinking, like especially
even
with yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, even if you go with the Kurt Busiek retcon, right? Even if you go with that, still, there should have been progression, right? Because all the Kurt Busiek himself wrote him as progressing, right? And everyone who was writing Iron Man all throughout Volume 3 was writing him as a progressed character compared to what he was before. So, so either way, no matter what start point you're going to go with, right? As you say, it's still bad. He shouldn't be reverting back to his old asshole self, assuming that he was an asshole to begin with, which is up for debate. So,
oh yeah, definitely.
Okay. So, yeah, to review issue 2. Yeah. All right, go ahead.
Oh yeah, no, I'm just saying I agree. I mean, I would describe Tony as he's basically like a Jane Austen character, right? He's Mr. Darcy, but with laser beams. You know, you get the first impressions of Tony Stark. You know, he's at the Duchess's ball, and he seems very sort of immature and boyish and laddish, and he's just partying and blah 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 blah. And oh God, you don't like him very much. You would never go out to the countryside with him. No, never in a million years. But then he invites you back to his chateau one day, and it turns out like he's a completely different person, right? But this is basically the Jane Austen story where you just read like the first 5 pages, and then you tried to do a big book report based on it, and your teacher picks up on that, and she's like, "You didn't read the rest of the story, did you?"
Yeah.
No, honest, I did. Look, he's a big jerk, and so.
Yeah. So to quickly run through issue 2 real quick, which we also have covered in previous streams. So we have Tony getting himself beaten up on live TV in one of arcades kind of setups. Then we have Cardiac kidnapping a bunch of Tony's former employees and sealing them up in an airtight sphere. And Tony nearly shatters his entire skeleton trying to break them out. We have the unicorn escaping from the psych ward. And the thing that everyone famously knows if they watch YouTube at all, Patsy berating Tony for his privilege while he's recovering in the hospital. This is a thing. This was the point where I think a lot of people on YouTube just said, "Fuck it, I'm not reading this." I'm basically the only one that's kind of sticking around, going, "Oh God, it's getting worse and worse." So yeah, this scene, if you watch comic YouTube at all, you've probably seen it already. This is Patsy while he's recovering in the hospital bed asking, "Have you ever had to look past your own privilege? You're giving yourself more power than you already had. You enjoy more legal leeway than most people on Earth, and you answer to absolutely no one. Like you're another white guy with a god complex." Screech!
You're probably wondering how I got myself into this situation.
Yeah. So at the time that this came out, like that, my first Cantwell video was inspired by this because it pissed me off to no end. Because once again, it's demonstrating that Cantwell hasn't read any of the old Iron Man comics at all. So, in my blog, I was like, "Fuck you." Yes, Tony does fit the actual non-ideological definition of privilege because he comes from old money. He's inherited this wealth, right? But the thing is, he's known that from the beginning, right? So the picture that's showing right now is from Tales of Suspense 41, and this is him just doing a charity demonstration for a children's hospital, right? And this is two freaking issues after he became Iron Man. He was showing the sort of charitable spirit literally at the very beginning of his existence as Iron Man. And this is him. This is in the 70s, Iron Man 82, him pointing out to the love interest at the time that the Iron Man Foundation was begun a number of years ago before establishing funds to aid underprivileged ghetto children even came into vogue. So I was pointing this out that he's got charitable foundations and has had them from very early on. So he's someone who is willing to spread his money around to people who don't have as much as he is, and has been written that way since Stan Lee. And I was also pointing out too that in Iron Man 78 we have this flashback story where Tony is in Vietnam and he runs into this kid who's been blinded by stuff going on in the war, and he actually literally cries because he feels like because he was a part of quote unquote the military industrial complex during this period, he feels like he is responsible for this kid's suffering, right? And here's him from the third Iron Man annual giving some of his money to someone who wants to start like a utopian kind of pro-environmentalist compound. Whoops. And we have this one. This is him talking about environmentalism as he perceives it. He says, when scientists solve the problems of pollution, imagine what our world could be like. A world of tall, clean towers and swift, silent transportation. A world where the busiest city has the time and space for elegant parks. A world in which we use our environment more efficiently. So this is him caring about the environment, caring about pollution, but doing so from the perspective of someone who is an inventor and wants to find like a technological solution to this problem. So I said in my blog, in short, you're talking about a guy who's been looking past his privilege, quote, his entire superheroic life. Noblesse oblige, as I've previously observed, is as fundamental to Tony Stark as his alcoholism, his technological genius, and his aforementioned feelings of worthlessness. And the post that I pulled that from could have been much, much longer if I had more time. Because it's also true that Tony finances the Avengers and allows them to use his family's New York City mansion. He builds shelters and halfway houses, offers resources to help distressed neighborhoods, etc. Has he sometimes been mistaken in his sincere attempts to better the world? Sure, but he's certainly aware that, as it says in Luke, to whom much is given, much is expected. So, the fact that we would even ask the question, has he looked past his privilege? That just makes my head explode because, of course, he has. That's how he's been written since Stan Lee, right? All right, so I'm going to let you guys talk if you would like to.
I think that says it well. I actually forgot about that painful moment of that 21st century is you lying in a hospital bed broken while some lady nags at you for all eternity and you can't move.
Because you're just a white rich guy who's never looked past his privilege.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the other thing that was, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, I'd agree with both of you. I haven't really been watching much comics Twitter, or comics YouTube, or reading comics Twitter rather. I do remember when you mentioned this particular page, right, Geek? So I wasn't completely shocked when it happened, but I'd kind of forgotten about it. So I guess for me it was fresh and freshly stupid. And it was actually kind of enjoyable. It was actually kind of enjoyable how absurd and infuriating it was. But again, if I'm going to do my like devil's advocate thing here, right, and try and give Cantwell the benefit of the doubt, I would say that this could actually work if we're simply establishing Hellcat as, an ideological nag who doesn't really know Tony and doesn't really think much past her own biases and her stereotypes and her hangups about the world, right?
Yeah.
Now I don't think that's what he was going for. I didn't get the sense of that from anything else. I kind of got the sense that Tony was supposed to agree with her and that you, the audience, were supposed to agree with her. And the thing is, like, a lot of this really does feel like, Cantwell writing from what he knows, right? Like he's writing according to his own experiences, and his own political bubble, and the milieu in which he exists, right? And that those attitudes are coming out everywhere. Like, Tony is white, so therefore he has white privilege, therefore he needs to be lectured, and nagged and beaten down, right? Like that's literally all the thinking that goes into this. It's a statement of faith from him.
Yeah, he's white and he's rich, so clearly he's never had any experiences that that would highlight what it's like to be someone who is not, right? So,
and of course, this is coming from another white person, right? An even whiter person, you know, a ginger, no less. But of course, she's a woman, so you know that's okay to have an election. So it's just, I mean, it's also very tiring. I mean, I don't want to get too upset about it, but this kind of thing just shows up a lot over the course of the writing, right? Over this run, there's little things that kind of creep their way in, where you can just see the voice of the author trying to break through.
Yeah, and it's a Bart Simpson book report of Tony Stark, basically. Yeah.
It's hey, look, Treasure Island. It's about pirates with eye patches, and they have parrots on their shoulders, and it's literally just reading the cover. But
and then there was something else that was concerning me at the time when issue 2 was dropped, and that is the fact that that was the self-destructive nature of a lot of the things that Tony was doing. So we have here, and this scene is Patsy questioning, did he deliberately get himself captured by Arcade so that he could be beaten up on live TV, right? So that opens up a question. At this point, is Tony suicidal, and does anybody notice or care? So there are some signs here of suicidal ideation that Tony is exhibiting. He's radically changing his routine. He's isolating himself from his usual cadre of friends. He's giving up his possessions, like, for example, his mansion. And he's engaging in reckless behavior that could lead to his death, like drag racing, cooperating with Arcade's arranged prize fight, throwing himself at an impenetrable sphere and puncturing his lung, and also actually expressing a wish to die. So I have this panel here. But what if I died doing something heroic? So when this issue came out, I actually did a whole post of, wait a minute, you know, it seems like Tony is suicidal, but everyone is treating him like, oh, he's just a whiny rich brat. He doesn't have any actual mental health things going on currently. So that was bugging me too.
More accidentally stumbling onto something. Yeah, he's everybody's ragging on him, and secretly he's just super depressed.
Yeah, well, I mean, again, right, Geek. You know, like I was saying, this is kind of, I think this is a great example of just Cantwell and modern comic book writers just bleeding their voice into it, because you got to figure that everybody in that industry is horribly depressed and borderline suicidal, right? So for them, right, like these kind of ideations are just a daily occurrence, right? And just ignoring it and berating your friends is the way to go. So, you know, it makes total sense if you're thinking about it from that kind of perspective, right? I think you're right. I think he does have a lot of ideations, or I think he would have a lot of ideations if this was written by somebody who is aware of how humans act and interact and feel and things like that. But yeah, I think a lot of it's just Cantwell and current year stuff.
Yeah, but it would if someone were taking this seriously, it fits with his past, and not just with the Denny O'Neil stuff that we've been going on. He has also expressed wishes to die at other times too. So, yeah, if someone actually cared about this character and was a good writer, and as you said, understood how human beings actually feel and interact with each other, we would do something with this instead of just treating him like he's some rich brat who's complaining for no reason, right? All right, issue 3 starts with him griping, "What do you people want from me?" So I was saying here, on the one hand, it's a valid question because so far the prevailing attitude regarding Tony is that he can't do anything right. So on the one hand, yeah, it might prompt someone who's an actual human being to wonder, geez, what do you guys actually want from me anyway, right? See also his visit to the schoolyard where, he visited a bunch of kids that were out on the playground. They were all excited and ready to learn things from him. And then the teachers come in and are like, this is really disruptive. You should have called it in advance. We believe in structured fun, right? And it's like, if I were a teacher in that situation, I'd be like, oh yeah, Iron Man's here? Sure. I'm going to cancel the rest of my lessons for today and let the kids learn from him. Not everything has to be structured.
If only he was a member of the cast of Friends, then the teachers would be cool with it.
No, see what he really had to do was show up in a dress with a big poofy wig and a bunch of condoms to hand out to the kids, and then it would be. Okay.
I'm here for a drag story hour. Yeah.
Yeah. Then it would be fine. But if it's just Iron
Man, if you use the micro transistors, the contraception is twice as effective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get microchip, kids. But yeah, just regular Iron Man. I mean, that's kind of creepy. You don't know where he's been, so
yeah. Get rid of him. Yeah, and then I said, on the other hand, the feeling of superiority expressed here is not Tony in any respect. Unless he's under the influence of alcohol, mind control, magic spells, or psychoactive nanotech, he's very careful with how he wields his power. So one of the things, it would make sense if it makes sense to a certain extent that once Tony gets access to cosmic power, that might corrupt him to a certain extent. But the way Cantwell's writing him, he's corrupted from the beginning. He's looking upon the world and saying, I'm so much better and more powerful and smarter than you, and I could lord myself over you if I wanted to, right? So like the fundamental flaw that Cantwell is arguing for is not something that is caused by the power cosmic, but is something that is in him from the beginning. And like I say here, that's not Tony. Tony doesn't think that he is superior to everyone else. Like I said, the only time that he's ever like stepped over the line into the only time he's ever stepped into the line in maybe overstepping his bounds are situations where he feels there's actually like a legitimate danger that he has to mitigate in some way. And he doesn't just do it because he feels like he is superior. The only Tony Stark who has ever manipulated people because he just felt he was Superior Iron Man by Tom Taylor. And in that particular run, he was actually under the influence of a magic spell. There was a spell that basically inverted his entire moral character. So, and that's when he started, putting extremists into the water in San Francisco and shit like that. But the key in that run is that wasn't Tony. That was the whole point. That wasn't Tony. That was a twisted, evil version of Tony. But now Cantwell is saying, no, that actually is the real Tony, right? And that's been a flaw in him from the start. And that isn't who Tony is. And then we have also the airplane scene. Haha, the rich man is uncomfortable in coach. Like Tony doesn't know what it's like to be poor. Oh, and also let's entirely forget that Tony has struggled with mental illness and addiction too. So we have this one. Punchy brought this up in DMs. Yeah, I've been dead too. Not by choice, you haven't. I got to a place where I thought the best thing for me to do was kill myself. Miraculously, I was given a chance to see that the choice I made was wrong. But do you think someone is all better after something like that? Of course not. You have no idea what it feels like to constantly hear something dark in your head. Preach! What are you talking about? Yeah.
She is the worst wife
do you
ever.
listeners remember this? Yeah. So, all right, let me go back. Back. Okay. So here he is. He's homeless, and we have another homeless guy inviting him into his cardboard box because Tony doesn't know what it's like to be poor or to be struggling. And then here we have Tony basically willing to kill himself via exposure in the worst blizzard in years in New York City, right? So, because Tony doesn't know what it's like to feel suicidal and to struggle with dark things in his head. It really is like Cantwell hasn't read any Iron Man comics prior to 1998, if he's read any Iron Man comics at all. Okay, I'm gonna let you talk so I can rest my voice for a second.
Maybe he's trolling us, right? Because it's one thing if like you don't read the entirety of Iron Man. How do you not read like the most famous Iron Man arc that everybody knows to get a feel for the dude?
Yeah.
Or he reads it and says, whatever. I want my Dommy Mommy GF Patsy Walker story. I don't know. Maybe I could go full circle to like Punchy's it's all a farce theory, and that Patsy's supposed to be just an ugly and nasty person in this scene. So she's not the Dommy Mommy waifu. Maybe she's just supposed to be a toxic and nasty influence in Tony's life, driving him towards insanity and becoming a broken man again.
Yeah, I mean that's.
I wish that was true, but I've actually seen the article that Marvel put out announcing that Tony is going to propose to Patsy in issue 20. We had quotes from Cantwell saying Patsy is just such a good fit for him. She keeps him grounded. So I think he actually genuinely thinks Patsy is doing a good thing for him, which is yeah.
I mean, I think this is one of those times where we really have to go back to postmodernism and hipster irony, right? Because irony can be useful sometimes, and I think reading this ironically really is the best way to appreciate it. Because as long as you have that in the back of your mind, like this is all just a gigantic troll, and she's terrible for Tony, and all this stuff is just meant to drive home the fact that she's awful, and the whole reason Tony wants to destroy the universe is because he's got crappy friends that he hates and that hate him. I mean, again, I would say the most likely rationale for all this is that Cantwell didn't read any of the previous Iron Mans, because like this isn't something that you can just chalk up to Hellcat being a bitch. Because Hellcat would have known about, she would have been aware of Tony's past as an alcoholic and a hobo and a suicidal depressive, right?
And also in the past, she has not been written as a bitch. So like Patsy's out of character here too. I'm focusing on Tony a lot because Tony's my favorite character, but Patsy is wildly out of character as well.
Yeah, so she's been replaced with some kind of pod person version of herself or something. But no, it's probably just because Cantwell is super familiar with these characters, and he's writing based on what he knows. He knows, he's got his own perspective of the kind of people that he knows, the kind of person that he feels he is in real life, and it just bleeds through, and it's miserable. Well,
yeah.
Did he do this because Batman had a mommy wife?
Yeah, I think it's part of the same. It's definitely part of the same trend. I don't know that Cantwell was looking at Tom King's work and specifically saying, "I want to do that." I think it's just that people like Tom King and Cantwell just come from that same worldview. So that's just what they naturally write.
Maybe relevant to Patsy is, I think, a few months before this comic started coming out, they had an arc where Spider-Man was crashing on Patsy Walker's couch and wearing her "Ask Me About My Feminist Agenda" little pink shirt around the house. So it's actually kind of been a theme that Patsy Walker is the Dommy mommy to your favorite heroes, calling them out on their BS and telling them to be butter.
Well, I don't think that was Patsy. I think that was Mockingbird.
Oh, that's Mockingbird. Okay, I mixed them up. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a fake guy.
Okay. Well, since all the female characters are being written, all the female characters are being as uber feminist mommy, mommy wives. It's kind of hard to tell them apart. So I understand.
I had a question about that, and I'll put it to both of you because maybe you understand the ins and outs of woke theology a bit better than I do, but this is essentially a Hellcat run, right? Cantwell seems to have more interest in writing about Hellcat than he does about writing Iron Man, but Cantwell is not a woman, as far as I know. I haven't read his pronouns, but I'm pretty sure he's a he, him, or at least a they. So would this count as cultural appropriation? Him writing.
I think that's the racial and ethnic aspect of intersectionality.
Would it be cultural appropriation if you're trying to write based on a gender? Like if
feminist.
I write a story, or J.K. Rowling, right? Writing stories about trans women or something, right? Like she's not a trans woman, so I mean, does this count as
maybe it's like a post irony thing, like, oh no, it's so ironic that we're all trapped in a capitalist Western culture. The only thing left for us to do is like some sort of praxis to destroy the culture, but we all know that we're still participating in it, so we just have to laugh at ourselves and how ridiculous our little lives are in the evil capitalist Western universe. Maybe it's something like that, right?
I think that was like 20 years ago, though. Like that's not current year theology. That's like outdated. Previous.
Well, maybe Marvel Comics is a few years behind the Academy. Right,
I've got
so now Marvel mixing up to the post-ironic movement.
They've got to be post.
I do have one thought. I don't know about the appropriation thing, but I do have one thought, and that is Cantwell is a white man, I believe. Tom King definitely is. Tom Taylor is. They're all white straight men. I think they feel very, very scared in this industry right now. So they're really trying hard to prove that they're a part of the in group, because the second they step off the reservation and even the tiniest little respect, the wokies are going to come after them, so I think there's a little bit of that motivating as well.
You think maybe he's just a hostage then? Maybe they've just got a gun to his head, or metaphorically speaking.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a part of it.
Well, that's actually kind of that's almost more disappointing. Like I'd rather that he was just kind of evil and scummy than cowardly. But maybe that's just me. I don't know.
Yeah, so we have quarterback luring Tony into a trap and revealing himself. Patsy has to come to Tony's rescue, and she's injured. So Tony becomes the damsel in distress, basically. I did say here the final panel of issue 3 was actually good. The real Tony would say that. As he's holding an injured Patsy, it's all my fault again. Real Tony actually does say it's all my fault when anything bad happens in his general vicinity. So that was like one moment of, okay, that's actually good.
No, though, could that be Cantwell identifying Tony Stark's sort of self-sacrificial, almost too self-sacrificial nature as the weakness that he needs to cure Tony? So when Tony says things like "it's all my fault" and blames himself, that's Tony, the knight in shining armor, taking on masculine heroic burdens that actually turn him into the ugly god monster creature later on.
Yeah, later on it does turn that way. So yeah, but like at the moment that I was reading this, I was like, yeah, that's actually him. But yeah, he Cantwell does twist this into this is actually a problem with Tony that needs to be fixed instead of something that actually makes him noble and heroic, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you guys might be overthinking this a little bit. I don't think it's him saying it's all my fault again, because that's part of his character, and that's a character flaw that he has. I think it's literally just him saying it's all my fault because Cantwell thinks it's all his fault, and he wants to drive home the fact that Tony is a big screw up who deserves everything that's coming to him. I don't think it's about the character. It's just more of, you know, basically just narrating things.
We need Benny Hill. We need Benny Hill music playing in the background of this comic as Tony wrecks everything. Yeah,
like a short bit or something, right? You know, oh, I screwed up.
Yeah, and then we have beginning of issue 4, opening with a surprise. Rhodey's been abducted. And Marm, you remember this, and we both read this comic when it came out. We're like, what? When did that happen? Did I miss an issue?
It just happened. Oops.
Oops. So there's I'm going to mention this a couple other times in this presentation, but there's a problem with uses of real estate. There's a lot of space that's wasted that could have been used to show how Rhodey got abducted, because that would actually be an exciting action scene. But no, we're going to dispense with that and have this really freaking long conversation between Patsy and Tony, which Patsy is just pissed off and taking it out on him. You know, she's like, someone has to hold you accountable for what? Like, what exactly did Tony do wrong? Like, at least in this particular scene. And by the way, Tony is the absolute best at holding his own self accountable. He's the reigning emperor in the kingdom of outsized guild complexes. That's basically the whole thing that touches off Armor Wars was, oh my God, some of my technology has fallen into the wrong hands. I have to take care of that myself because I feel guilty that that's happened. I think, actually in my analysis, I think what was going on there was he thought that technology falling into the wrong people's hands was a consequence of his being drunk for a year. So he's like, yeah, that's definitely my fault that that's out there. I don't want any of the bad guys to have it. Let me actually take accountability for that. So he knows about being accountable, right? He doesn't need someone to teach him that. Oh yeah, and Patsy and Tony sleep together because that moral project you just took on is so hot, right, Patsy? Oh, and then like I said, this whole conversation between Tony and Patsy went on for several pages that should have been used for other things. It took way too long to get to the point. It was very frustrating. You could have really started in the middle of that conversation, I think, and chopped a whole lot of it out. And it would have worked better. Let's see. While Tony's cucked, Rhodey gets to be a badass by resisting 3 of the controller's discs. Korvac reveals his plan to absorb the world's energy in order to accomplish his ascension to godhood. Tony decides to pull together a team of heroes whom Korvac won't think to track. Methinks Cantwell didn't want to use anyone remotely top tier. Probably because he was kind of maybe unconsciously aware that he would write them out of character too. Korvac blacks out NYC and hijacks Patsy's body to warn Tony off. And Halcyon rescues Tony and reveals he's a mutant. So once again, in a fight, Tony is useless and someone else has to come to his rescue. And let's not forget the bizarre Christ imagery.
And by the way, I noticed this in the new issues as well. Like, we're doing a thing about religion. Korvac's consistently alluding to the Christ story without ever saying, like, I am the next Christ. Like I'd almost feel relief if he just came out and said, I will be the next Christ or something, because even though that'd be a lot more on the nose, I wouldn't feel like I'm going crazy noticing all of these attempts at, like, subtly appropriating the Christ story. And this is kind of like one of my central points is it would make more sense to have two characters have a debate with each other about religion, because then we see the ideas about religion being acted out through characters. Instead, we're having vague allusions to it's Neon Genesis Evangelion cross explosions, where when they asked the creator, why did you have giant crosses in the explosions, his answer was, because I thought the cross explosions looked cool. No other reason.
Yeah, it's like he wants to do these religious allusions because he thinks it's cool, but he's not really smart enough to actually address the theme in an actual thoughtful way.
Yeah, well, I think it's so that you know he's the bad guy, right? Because you've got to be able to identify the bad guy. So, just make him a Christian, and there you go. He's ready-made evil guy.
Well, ready-made evil guy, yeah. Okay, issue 5, the team briefing. Just do what I say is not how Tony leads. Please read, for example, Avengers Volume 1, number 180 to 200. Roughly around that time, Tony was in charge of the Avengers, and he was definitely not telling the other Avengers, just follow me, I know what's best, right? He was cooperating with them and, actually being a genuinely good leader, though kind of a hassled one, because right around the time that he was leader of Avengers, at least in this period, the government was hassling the Avengers and the government was trying to tell him what to do. It's actually a very based story, because at one point we have Tony saying, excuse me, but I'm not going to let the government tell us what to do. Pretty awesome. Definitely check those out for sure. Tony wondering if Korvac could be right is obviously a setup for later. But when Tony I've already said this, but when Tony has overstepped his bounds and imposed himself on others, he's done so generally because he's perceived some existential threat, not because he just thinks he's smarter and can run the world better than other people can. Yes, Tony wants to change the world. Yes, Tony wants to secure the future, but no, he generally doesn't want to do so by force. Korvac's approach would not even be a little bit attractive to this character. Ruling the world is not among his ambitions. No, not even during Civil War. Even during Civil War, when they told him, when he became director of S.H.I.E.L.D., right, he didn't do so by choice. He was basically blackmailed into it. He didn't want that power at all, and he definitely didn't enjoy it. So power is not something he seeks as a character, not even in the modern era. Tony uses Patsy as bait to find Korvac, which is kind of skeevy in itself. Korvac, meanwhile, blows up Tony's team with a decoy ship and breaks Tony's neck. And that's the end of issue 5. I'm kind of like running through these issues real quick. Any comments on issue 5 before I go on to issue 6?
I like the reveal of Tony's neck getting broken. It's just instantly fixed by them using his armor as a kind of cast so he can keep fighting and moving normally with a broken neck. So
I'd say you can just go through. I mean, I did like that broken neck thing too. I thought that was kind of a neat little touch. Other than that, that issue was just a whole blur to me, to be honest. I mean, there was some good action scenes. I do like the art. I thought the art was fine. But it's just there. It's just there.
Yeah, the interior art I do like. Sometimes it lacks dynamism, I think. It feels more like an illustration than comic art. But
was this one Cafu or someone else took over for this one?
I think we're still Cafu. I think the only time it wasn't Cafu was in Patsy's issue. So it's very nice. It's very well drawn, but sometimes it's a little flat and boring. But the question I have is that the fault of Cafu, or is that the fault of Cantwell's writing? It's kind of hard to separate,
Yeah, again, I mean, I'd say it's probably the writing. Again, I did a little thing on Murata and One Punch Man on Twitter the other day, trying to illustrate how, great art can work if you know how to do the writing well to go along with it. And I don't think in this case that is the case.
Yeah.
But
Cafu needed 22 panels that always work.
I love that. Everyone should just Google that. Every artist should Google 22 panels that always work and just print it out and keep it by your drawing table.
Okay, yeah. So issue 6, Patsy loads the injured Tony into a shopping cart and brings it back to headquarters, where they find that Gargoyle has lost a wing, protecting the others from the explosion at the end of the last issue. As Korvac prepares to travel to the world ship, Rhodey escapes. Rhodey again gets to be a badass in this. Good news for Punchy. Okay, so the drink or the dream. Yeah. All right, so the drink or the dream, which is him contemplating what's going to happen if they put him on payments, right? In this, we really should have seen Tony more actively resisting people giving him pain meds. Because in prior stories in which the possibility of him getting pain meds came up, he always jumped up and said, "Oh no, don't give me that. I'm an alcoholic," right? So, and we don't see that here. He's kind of passively accepting that he needs to take these, right? There should have been more active resistance here to really be in line with what we've seen before. On the other hand, the fact that Tony wants to skip the hospital and continue the fight is pretty on brand. In prior storylines, we have seen a lot of Tony continuing the fight, even though he's bleeding internally inside of the armor. So that fits. But again, the drugs should have been resisted a lot more passionately than they were. But then we get this bullshit. On recovery, I need him up in ambulatory. This is talking about Gargoyle. What do you want me to say?
Yes.
He's a fucking gargoyle. You want me to Google it? We're leaving the planet inside of 2 hours. If he's out for the count, then he's a waste of my time, and we leave him. Screech!
Yes. That's front and center in my note file too.
Yeah. So this is Tony being a dick. And I say Screech because the guy who routinely takes hits for his teammates and will risk self-sacrifice on their behalf would not be so callous. For fuck's sake, he once sucked down air filled with flesh-eating bacteria because Captain America needed CPR, and Captain America is more important than you.
Oh, God,
that was an
really?
Avengers wrestling. Yes. Look for poison infected air. That was in Avengers Red Zone if you need the reference.
Oh God! I mean, quick tangent. Have you guys ever actually seen flesh-eating bacteria at work?
Yeah. I don't want to.
Okay, because I had a friend when I was in the military who got infected with flesh-eating bacteria in his leg, and it was on a field training FTX exercise, and we had to like airlift him out with a helicopter to get him to a hospital, and they got him treated within like 8 hours or something, but he still lost so much of his leg that it was like somebody took a basketball-sized ice cream scoop and just scooped out a whole chunk of his muscle, and it's the craziest thing I've ever seen. One of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. But sucking in flesh-eating bacteria air from Captain America's lungs, that's a pretty gutsy thing to do. I can definitely relate.
Yeah,
that's great.
And he did, and that last bit's in quotes because that's literally what he said. He's like, well, he was sitting there with a dilemma because, oh no, Captain America's not breathing. And he's like, but I can't take off my mask or I will be infected. But then he's like, nope, sorry, Captain America is more important than you. And he takes off the mask. So, so I have this meme here that I made for myself. This was Winnie the Pooh and Eeyore, but I was like, oh, that fits Tony. So I edited it here and I said, well, which Tony is the real Tony? Shoot him. He's the clone. I'm the real Tony. And then Captain America shoots the guy who spoke. the real Tony would never pass up a chance to die.
It's pretty great.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, moving on. Korvac is still communicating telepathically with Patsy. We have Tony's line, I bet you I could create a better universe than Korvac. In retrospect, yikes. Rhodey shows up and tells a critically injured Tony. What?
Foreshadowing, I guess, or Chekhov's in a better universe than Korvac.
Yeah. Rhodey shows up and tells a critically injured Tony to tag out, thereby demonstrating he's the only one here with a functioning brain cell. Yay for Punchy again. Good old Flash and brute force is something Tony relies on too often in this run. Where's the brilliant strategic mind? That's a question I come up with a lot. It seems like Tony's solution to everything is to punch it really hard in these comics, and it misses that in the past he's used strategy and smarts and his brains to get out of situations. He doesn't just punch things. Oh yeah, and Tony punching out the guardsman when the guardsman shows up was really, really lame and not earned at all.
Well, I'm okay with him punching out people. I will avow the punching. But you're right. It is out of character. Did you get the final panel where Tony was doing something to Rhodey's butt and there was sparks flying out of Rhodey's butt?
No, you're even ruining the Cantwell comics with his observation.
Well,
no, I didn't get
it. The interesting thing about that was like I didn't find it as amusing because I'm thinking in the back of my mind like, oh yeah, like it's probably fine, it's probably intentional and whatever, boring when it's boring when it's
boring when it's intentional. Yeah,
but there is
issue 7.
Spoiler warning, there is stuff like that in this issue. So.
Yeah. Issue 7, Rhodey is once again actually being written pretty well. Rhodey expresses doubt that Tony can beat Korvac by punching him really, really hard. I agree. Like, again, I've been saying it a couple of times over the past few slides, but Rhodey actually gets to be a badass and he gets to be intelligent. And he gets to demonstrate that he's the one with the brain cell. So if you're a fan of Rhodey, like Punchy is, that should be good. But of course, it's coming at the expense of writing Tony as an idiot. So I can't cheer for two cheers for Rhodey being written well, not 3, because of course Tony is being written like an immature teenager and a moron, right? Yeah, then we get a pointless conversation about God and religion. Can't write well, can't keep track of his real estate. I know, Punch, when you got to that one, you DM'd me. No, you thought that the Frogman was okay, but then you got to that scene and you're like, nope, kill all of them. I hate them all. So...
which one? Oh yeah, okay. This scene, yeah, okay. I do remember that because I was going to ask about the Frogman too, like a couple issues ago, because he's kind of the most interesting character as far as I'm concerned. Just because he's in a big frog suit and he doesn't seem to have any powers. Does anyone know, like, does he have a backstory or something?
I know he has the power to leap, and I know he's shown up in older comics. I think his presence here is if you have a character no one cares about, then you can get away with more stuff with them. Like you can get away with killing them off, or I don't know, turning the frog gay or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing was, right, like, because we were kind of discussing this earlier with the idea of doing like a more street level story, right? And when I saw the frog guy, my first thought was, well, my very first thought was like, oh, Peppy and Kermit the Frog and ha ha ha, isn't that funny, right? Meme character. But then I was thinking about it, and I'm like, again, just a brief tangent on the One Punch Man again. I think I've mentioned this before, but my favorite character by far in One Punch Man is a character named Moomin Rider. who, if you guys haven't read One Punch Man before, Moomin Rider is the absolute bottom tier superhero. His gimmick is that he's a guy who doesn't know how to drive a car, so he has to ride a bicycle everywhere, and that's it. That's his gimmick. That's his superpower.
Yeah.
He's he's a guy who can't drive a car, so he has to ride a bicycle. But he actually winds up being one of the most interesting and poignant characters in the entire run. And I don't want to give away any spoilers because I think Moomin Rider is absolutely brilliant and I love him. But the idea of having like this grossly underpowered superhero who nevertheless winds up being like the most endearing and heroic character possibly of all time is just really, really great to me. And I saw this frog guy and I'm like, oh my god, is Frogman going to be the Moomin Rider for these Iron Man comics? And no. He's not, no. But for a brief instant, I thought maybe they were going to, subvert my expectations and have a really fun, grossly underpowered, but still, heroic and interesting character. And they almost do it in like issue 15 or 16 or something.
Yeah.
He
does have that one moment. Yeah.
He's got like one moment where he almost does something. Although his moment is specifically like, "Oh, I'm going to be the badass, superpowered superhero." Which, again, I'm not gonna go into spoilers for Moomin Rider in case you know.
Batman's the closest we have to Moomin Rider in Western comics, and they even screw that up when they turn him into Bat God. But yeah.
Kind. I mean, maybe. I mean. I don't know. Moomin Rider is really crap. Like he's the guy who does go out and help old ladies across the street, right? Like his big adventure of the week is he gets a cat out of the tree. But yeah, I was thinking that maybe like this frog guy could be an interesting street level thing. But then they all start going into the fedora atheist, like, oh, what about God?
What is God really? Yeah.
Guys, God of science. Yeah, it's just like, oh god, like the fedora. Like if he doesn't really get into religion earlier on in the run, like he does do that religion theme, like he sets up the idea that there's something about religion and the bad guys are religious, I guess, and maybe there's some Christ imagery. He doesn't actually start to really discuss religion until this issue, and that's when it kind of goes off the rails for me because it's like, okay, yeah, he's euphoric. Like, all right, just shut up, guys. Well,
yeah,
and again, this is coming from the perspective of like an agnostic atheist who was raised in euphoric circles, right? I'm like, stop.
Yeah, I'm going to say this later again, but there's a difference between being a non-believer and being a fedora.
Oh, yeah, huge world of difference. And the Kincaid scene. Yeah, we're going to discuss the Kincaid thing.
Yeah. So then Patsy and Tony mentally connect with Korvac, and we learn he wants to purge the universe of individuality and, organic life. And yeah, it is kind of refreshing that that's presented as a bad thing. But of course, in this scene, it wouldn't be complete without gratuitous shots at Thomas Kincaid.
Yeah, oh god, I hate you so much. Like Marmaduke, are you familiar with Kincaid? Or do you have any?
He's the favorite thing for art students and art professors to make fun of. Hey guys, you don't want to make paintings like Thomas Kincaid, do you? Well, that's why you need to do conceptual idea. All right, so yeah, this is old, well-trodden ground for me. Kincaid is fun to make fun of in an elite urban intellectual artist space because he's the guy you can hold up and say, see, doing pretty pictures is intellectually deficient. So instead, our idea of art is much more intellectually stimulating than that little grandma backwards rural kind of art.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I had the exact same experience. Like so many people in like art classes and things, just like, oh, Thomas Kincaid. That actually kind of got me, ironically, to start appreciating Kincaid, and then unironically appreciating Kincaid. But the fun thing is, he's actually he worked on Fire and Ice. So I don't see. I don't see Cantwell working on Fire and Ice, so you know.
Wait, like a Song of Fire, a Song of
No,
Ice and Fire?
Fire, the classic sword and sorcery barbarian film. I don't know if you've seen that.
Cool.
The animated feature. Ralph Bakshi and what's his name? The Conan the Barbarian guy.
Oh, I've seen clips of that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun, and Thomas Kincaid. There's tons of great artists were working on it. I think it's called Fire and Ice, right? Yeah, Fire and Ice. It was a collaboration between Ralph Bakshi, the Lord of the Rings Hobbit animated feature guy, and Frank Frazetta, whom you guys both know Frank.
Yeah. I've seen all the Frank Frazetta memes.
Yeah. He's great. So they had this amazing little rotoscoped animated feature. Peter Chung from Aeon Flux, who's just one of the greatest artists of the 90s. Do you guys know Peter Chung? Or familiar with that?
Did he like create Aeon Flux? So he kind of like initiated that whole series? Or
Yeah, he was the I think he was maybe like the sole guy on it, at least for the first the first few episodes, and then it kind of later spun off into a bigger thing.
Did he like work on it as like a younger guy? Because I think he was more of a 90s.
Yeah. It was like a 90s thing. The Fire and Ice, I think, was one of his first things that he was doing. But it was him and Thomas Kincaid was a background artist too. So it's a lot of fun if you're into kind of indie, like based indie artists who aren't all paused and stuff. Definitely check out Fire and Ice and Thomas Kincaid.
Sweet
work on that. But yeah, the Thomas Kincaid thing just really got my goat. I was like, oh god.
So Thomas Kincaid has one more really interesting art film in his resume and portfolio than most art school students do.
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, like the thing that really got me specifically with this issue, just to bring it back to Iron Man for a minute, is Thomas Kincaid's work is basically the exact opposite of what Korvac is saying here. Like Korvac wants to make everything just kind of bland and crystalline and make everything the same. And the whole point with Thomas Kincaid, right? Like, yeah, whether you like him or not, right? You have to recognize that his work is full of color, right? He's one of the most colorful, light-filled artists around. I mean, it is a bit hokey and hacky and stuff, but it's not anywhere near the same kind of hokey and hackiness as what Korvac's describing. So, you know, I'm not sure what artist you might compare his world to, but it definitely wouldn't be Kincaid. Like you could have him envisioning like a terrible, horrible dystopia that looks like a Kincaid painting, and then get behind it. The way he's describing it, it's more like oh god, who was the guy that did all the drapery, the orange drapes?
Boy, I don't know.
Do you guys remember they used to throw orange drapes over like buildings and like the White House?
Oh, okay. Wait, like
okay,
so
that rings some kind of bell, but not the name.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh god, I can't remember what they're. But yeah, they were artists that were famous for throwing big orange drapes over thing. Oh, that's it. Christo and Jean-Claude.
Right, and he also put like a giant white drape wall like across California or something.
Yeah. Things like they just throw big drapes over stuff, and then the art is. I mean, it does look pretty cool.
It's delineating like between lines. It's turning a building into a art object, that kind of a thing. Yeah,
that sort of stuff. They were like pioneers of that kind of thing, and like I'll concede that some of the stuff does look pretty cool, but I mean that would be more like kind of how I would envision this Korvac thing, right? Like because Korvac wants to make everything just blah and uniform and crystalline. So I don't know. I guess that's my Kincaid, right? God, I hate this issue so much.
I was thinking, as someone who was a neuroscience major, I was thinking of Korvac is basically very left hemisphere. It's all about schematics and orders and order and objects rather than organic life, essentially. It also kind of reminds me of like what the NICE wants in and Lewis's space trilogy, right?
Yeah.
We're going to rid the world of all the dirt and organic mess, and just have nice, clean, modern machine-like a modern machine-like culture in its place, where there's none of that messy biological crap to interfere with the scientific order of the universe we want to create, basically.
Yeah, well, I think specifically that moon guy, right? Like I forget what his name is. Yeah. Like, wasn't he? Oh, actually, wasn't he like the bishop or something, like the priest guy who was obsessed with the moon and the moon destroying like all the organic life and just turning into this barren crystalline field of perfect order or something?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, I maybe Cantwell stole this from that idea's strength. You never know.
But yeah, and then at the end of this issue, Tony gets yeeted out of his own comic for 2 issues. So yeah.
I actually kind of like the subplot of Tony dealing with Stiltman, because that seemed like just a more. So I was actually enjoying myself for a couple issues because he's got to stop Stiltman. It looks like Stiltman is Alan Watts, but Stiltman, it's just a cup. It's just a fig leaf and secretly killing people who preserve his power, right? So, and then Stiltman is paralleling Korvac, and it just so happens that everybody Tony meets has a god complex, and he has to fight them while they work out their god complex. But it is an interruption. It's all happening while allegedly we're in like the final 10 minutes of the movie where they're trying to race to Galactus's ship before Korvac gets there. We're going to pause that, have a mini adventure over here, and then get back to meanwhile back at Galactus's ranch.
Yeah. So and now the side quest. Yeah. So beginning of issue 10, Tony has been in Megiddo for 6 days. Wait, how does the timeline work? Because they were like before the side quest, they were on their way to Tatu, right? And they had FTL. So is it really going to take 6 days for them to get there? Like, oh wait, how does the timeline work? Assault here are a random assemblage of folks, including Canada, from different parts of the galaxy who've established what appears to be a utopian community, although we find out, as Marma's already spoiled, that that's not, in fact, what's going on here. Oh, and Tony's already getting addicted to the pain meds. He also finds the remains of a lost civilization, specifically their giant robots, and he discovers that Stiltman is the poobah in charge. Oh, yeah. Can't write well. Tony doesn't have a problem with this. He's never been in it for the butt pats. So, yeah. So we have this panel here. Boo-hoo. No, you're right. I mean, I think that would be fine. Better. I could do the good thing, and that would be that. You mean do it while nobody was watching? Yeah. So, you pointed this out in the DMs. Like, okay, I won't do it for the butt pats. But the thing is, Tony hasn't been a hero for the butt pats. And I actually sent you, Punch, this from Iron Man Volume 3, number 78. This is in the arc where Tony decided that he had to become Secretary of Defense because people in the Defense Department were using his technology without his permission. So I thought, well, the only way I'm going to get a handle of that is if I take over the Defense Department. So he's up, at the Senate confirmation hearing here, and he's testifying about what he would do or the reason why he wants to be Secretary of Defense. And the text in this here, which might be a little hard for you guys to read. What exactly do you mean, Mr. Stark? And he says, just what I said, Senator. The Iron Man, and I never took the credit. The Iron Man and I never took the credit. Did I try to associate his positive image with my companies? Yes, I did. But that's all. I never, ever asked for a direct reward for everything I ever did as Iron Man. And for every life I told you I saved as Iron Man, there are tens, hundreds that I've kept to myself. To save lives, I have traveled far, farther than any of you will ever go. I have traveled to dark places, all alone, away from anyone who could see, hear, or help. I have staved off threats that you will never ever hear about. The simple knowledge of these would cause more fear and ruin on the world than I could ever hope to gain from them. Yes, Tony Stark is Iron Man, but Iron Man is not about Tony Stark. Iron Man is about everyone else. So this is actual real Tony describing his motivations, and it's basically exactly the opposite. He's not here he wasn't Iron Man for the fame. He isn't Iron Man for the butt pats. Okay. Tony became Iron Man basically to stay alive and escape from captivity. Then he used his armor to avenge Yinsen, and then he realized he could help other people. He's motivated by survivor's guilt and by a genuine desire to do good, not by the fame. Oh, and also, Iron Man is not a distraction from Tony's true self. Iron Man enables Tony's true self. It would be nice if Tony could feel confident being selfless and gentle without his armor, but childhood trauma is what it is. So, there's this implication here that being Iron Man is something that is inauthentic to Tony, instead of actually what Iron Man really is the authentic Tony. It's the thing that enables him to be who he actually is without all the facades of being the toxic masculine playboy. But again, there's a suggestion here that Iron Man is something he has to give up because he's just doing it for the fame. And that's not actually true to his motivations at all.
Yeah, I think you're spot on about that. I mean, this little conversation that he has with Hellcat was where it completely went off the rails for me, right? I mean, he's already had bad characterizations of Tony. But one of the things that I started thinking around this time, have you guys ever heard of a guy by the name of Super Eye Patch Wolf or his Simpsons video essays?
Oh, I've seen his channel pop up in my recommendation, but never clicked.
YouTube recommends it a lot for weebs, so well, I'd recommend it, especially for you, Marmaduke. Also for you, Right Geek, if you like The Simpsons at all. But he does a very famous, one of his most famous videos is on The Simpsons and the phenomenon known as zombie Simpsons, right? Like this idea that The Simpsons used to be really good, and then somewhere along the lines, the show just went completely off the rails, and now it's this completely different monster called Zombie Simpsons that nerds like to call Zombie Simpsons. Haven't watched him in it. Yeah, he's good. I haven't watched him in forever either, but one of the main points that he makes right throughout his video essay is this idea of Homer Simpson being jerk ass Homer, right? He calls him jerk ass Homer. And the thing is, like in the early episodes of The Simpsons, Homer is presented as, you know, this big, dumb, selfish, bumbling oaf. But that's not really what he is, right? Like at the end of the day, like he's imperfect, but he loves his family and he tries to do the good thing once he realizes what that good thing is, right? Like he is a good person at heart. He just happens to have all these different flaws which cause him to make mistakes, and then he has to correct those mistakes, thus initiating, you know, a heroic journey along the course of the episode. But what wound up happening with Zombie Simpsons is that inner Homer disappeared, and instead what we get is just the dumb, selfish, bumbling oaf, right? Like something like Peter from Family Guy, right? Like there's nothing redeemable about Peter. He's just a complete arsehole.
Does he talk about Flanderization at all?
I think there might be some stuff about Flanderization too. But it's been a while since I've watched any of his stuff, and he does like 3 hours on The Simpsons. It's great. So I highly recommend that Fire and Ice and Super Eye Patch Wolf Simpsons episode. But basically the point is that we've now reached this part. It's not Marvel Zombies, it's Zombie Marvel. And this is now jerk ass Iron Man. It's Iron Man that has his soul's been sucked out. So maybe he is just a soulless AI. I don't know. But yeah, it's really striking, especially with these, because it runs so counter to everything that we've been reading about Iron Man for these 4 or 5 months that Reich's been giving us homework. So you know,
it's almost like I had a secret. It's almost like I had a secret evil plan to have you read all that own stuff, so you would be prepared to recognize how terrible this is.
Yeah, cunning. I mean, if I was reading this without knowing who Iron Man was, right, I would I wouldn't see what the big deal was. You know, like I wouldn't hate it necessarily. But I wouldn't really be eager to read more things about this guy because he just seems kind of like a jerk. And okay, he's got
if all you were a normie that like watched the MCU movies, but you weren't like super invested in it, so you didn't spend a whole lot of time deeply analyzing the character of Tony Stark in the movies, you might not be bothered by this. But if you have, like, even if you're a normie who has just watched the movies, but you are a huge fan of the movies and you were deeply invested in Tony Stark as a character, even you, I think, would be bothered by this. And if you've read the comics to any great extent, you're definitely going to be bothered by this for sure.
And also another thing that was annoying me about this, since I'm just looking at her face right now, is just the way that he's deferring to her on everything, right? Like he's such a spineless simp. He just sits there and he's like, yes, waifu, yes, you're completely
please
right.
Don't read my mind. It's rude.
Yeah.
You did it again, honey.
You did it again, honey.
Like I could just picture him like in like a Twin Peaks episode or something, you know, like the short little fat guy from Twin Peaks Returns or something. It's just oh god.
So we have the Ultimos, right?
Attack
Tony
on
fails
Titan.
to stop the when it turned into Attack on Titan. So Tony fails to stop the robotic monster from eating some of the colonists, including Yar. The problem with that is Tony has fought an Ultima before and won. Thus, he should be capable of coming up with a strategy to defeat this one that involves something other than bumbling around and once again punching it really hard. It was actually fairly early on, either early in Volume 1 or in Tales of Suspense, that Tony fought Ultimo before. And the last time, he just led Ultimo into a volcano. and like trapped him in a volcano. Essentially, it was using again brains and smarts instead of just trying to punch it. And also, why would Tony need to be reminded about the features of his own damned armor? I don't care if he's high on morphine. That he's gonna know that armor backwards and forwards. It's his armor. So, Marm, you notice this too. Like where Canada has to remind him, hey, don't you have a unibeam? What the fuck? Tony's gonna know that already,
Hey, Cyclops, you have eye beams, maybe. Oh yeah, okay.
Oh wait, I can fly.
Yeah, Superman. Why don't you just jump over that building in a single bound? I can do that.
Yeah. And and like I said, he is on morphine, but I think when it comes to his armor, he's still gonna. Like I said, I don't care how high he is. He's still gonna know what's in his armor. Yeah. So that was dumb, and it just makes Tony. It's just tearing Tony down and making him look incompetent.
Okay. Well, I guess
why,
my
in other
question
words,
is,
is Tony so useless here? Go ahead.
how would you have been in the Ultimo if you were Tony? What might be your idea for defeating the Ultimo?
Is there a volcano on this world? or since he probably knows, since he's fought an Ultimo before, so he knows how the Ultimo works and that it can be easily led. Maybe not trapping him in a volcano, but maybe still leading him somewhere that will make him not a threat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, because what I was thinking, because he's fighting Stiltman, right? Or like that eventually winds up being the case. Like Stiltman's there.
Yeah.
So I would have just gone straight for the whole Attack on Titan, like just go the whole shebang and have Stiltman make a bunch of like stilt suits that they can use to fly around, and all the townsfolk wind up beating the Ultimo, and Tony's like, oh, they're handling themselves.
And Tony's like the and Tony is like the leader that helps him prepare for that, and and helps him build. Yeah,
do like a seven samurai kind of thing, except with one samurai being Tony, and maybe Canadian guy.
Yeah,
I did like the angle of Tony uncovering the conspiracy, the evil politicians just using religion and creating a fake war to consolidate.
Oh, shush! I disavow. I'm sorry,
but Tony doesn't actually end up helping. They just carry him off, I guess, to lynch him or whatever. And then Tony just says, "Oh well, I guess we'll just leave him to it." And he leaves the town, basically having done not done that much to help him out. We're just gonna leave you guys here to figure it out.
Yeah, he just leaves them to murder the hippie commune guy, and then while he's screaming for help.
Also, I want to help you. I like it here. I was like, no, Tony wouldn't leave his friends in lurch like this. Have we forgotten that they're about to confront Korvac on the world ship? What even is going on in this story?
Yeah, and I mean, he realizes this is like a cosmic threat too, right? Like at this point, he's like, oh yeah, the entire universe is gonna die. But no, I'll just hang out here, whatever.
Yeah, Side Quest Part 2, Electric Boogaloo.
You know what might
be the issue?
Sorry, I was going to say one thing that might have worked. So I was thinking about it. But like if you had Tony transported to like a paradise world or something, right? Like someplace where there was a lot of party stuff and party girls, hot chicks in bikinis, and booze that doesn't actually get you drunk or addicted or anything, something that's like the ideal paradise world. And then Tony would have like an actual reason to be like, hey, maybe there's some reason, but no, I can't stay because I'm the hero and I've got to go off and save stuff, right? This world's just kind of crap. Like there's no real reason for him to stay there.
Like other than the feeling that these people are endangered by the Ultimos. I could see him being motivated by that. But he also has the ability to, he doesn't need to be reminded. Patsy doesn't need to remind him that threat here on this one world versus total universe threat. Yeah, he's gonna choose the
He's got no motivation to stay. There's no earthly reason for him to stay there.
Yeah, and the other thing is alcohol that doesn't get you drunk. It's funny you should mention that because in Dan Slott's run, there was a story in which he's basically set up this virtual reality world. He becomes basically like a game designer and sets up this virtual reality world that everyone can, be a part in and, make the world to their specs essentially. And in that virtual reality world, he does drink. And obviously, in virtual reality, drinking is not going to get you drunk, but it still makes him feel guilty. So I don't even think alcohol that doesn't make you drunk is not gonna is gonna be a motivation for him.
I mean, you could have that be part of the storyline too, right? Like he could be getting really tempted, right? You could like Ulysses on like his pleasure island, right? When he wakes up, he finds out pigs. But you could have him like, oh yeah, this is such a nice place, and then he sees the alcohol and he's reaching for it, but then like there's a zoom in close on the alcohol bottle and his eye suddenly flashes open and he's like, no, this is not the path I've got to go on, and I've got to go back, and I can't do this never again kind of thing. So I don't know. I think it could work if there was some kind of motivation for him to stay, but there really isn't. So.
Yeah. Well, and like the motivation wouldn't just be like parties and pretty girls either. I think it'd have to be deeper than that. Like, here is an old lover that died back in 1972, come back to life. Like,
anytime any girl other than Hellcat shows up, he's instantly more interested in her than Hellcat.
Yeah, but like back in the 70s or late 60s, I don't recall exactly when, but it was around that period. He had a girl named Janice Cord who ends up dying. Like, what if she came back? that would be an actual real motivation for him to stay on a pleasure planet.
Okay, yeah. So here's what we could do then. We could have the pleasure planet, right, with these girls that he used to know, or maybe they're like clones of girls he used to, or ghost echoes or something. Like it's not really explained. And Hellcat shows up and like she astral projects and she's like, oh, come back, Tony. And Tony's like looking back and forth and he's like, nah, you know what? I think maybe I'm going to stay here. And then he notices like the Janet girl. She's like, oh, and we've got all this alcohol here that won't get you drunk. And that's when he's like, no.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah.
So that snaps him out of it. And then, maybe he's looking at it and then he has like flashbacks to him beating up Rhodey or Rhodey beating him up rather, slamming him into the ground. He's like, no, I can't go back to that. I've got to go save the world. And then
even if it doesn't make me drunk, it's still
like that might work.
Yeah, because he's very much even if I don't get drunk, I clearly had the intention to, and that's a problem, right? Yeah, so we have
unless you can't, well, in which case you just break the morphine regulator and have a fun silly story about it.
Yeah, so that's like once again, like that's a problem. Like if Tony is aware, right, that he has issues with substance abuse, he's not going to just break the regulator just for the hell of it, he's going to be very, very conscious. Or he's going to realize, and you can see him in some panels starting to realize, oh shit, I'm already starting to crave this. So why the hell would he break his regulator if he already knows he's in trouble, right? Once again, we have the situation where we're writing a Tony that apparently has had no past experiences with this that he's learned from, and that would make him seriously reconsider that temptation to break the regulator, you know? Yeah, but talking about the confrontation with Stiltman. So we have here at the beginning of issue 11, Tony presses Stiltman on why they haven't done anything about the giant killer robots. And he pushes and pushes on that. Then Patsy pops in and nags Tony again for faults he doesn't have. Hint, the fact that Tony would feel responsible for all your deaths is not actually another manifestation of his privilege and self-absorption. As the kids say,
Patsy, it's weird. Ever since I appeared on this planet, a universe away from you, Patsy, I've been feeling oddly at peace.
But here was me a while back fixing what she said. What she actually said was something along the lines of, you're making it all about you, right? And I was like, no, it's not that. So I fixed it. I said, stop doing that, Tony. Did you ask to be sent here? Was it your choice to leave us on our own? We know you want to be here to watch our backs, but we also know we can't wait for you. That would actually be more in line with Tony's motivations. But once again, it's Patsy reading, oh, he just wants to control the situation. He's just this privileged guy that wants to impose his decisions on everyone else. And he's just making it all about himself and not letting us be heroes. No, he's not saying wait for me because of that. He's saying wait for me because he actually genuinely cares about your well-being and would, in fact, genuinely feel guilty and responsible if you all die because he wasn't there, right? So, yeah, fixed it for you. Yeah, later in this issue, after Tony sneaks out to analyze one of the Ultimos, we discover that Stiltman has been manipulating the hippie commune all along, using the killer robots to cull the herd and keep the people united. So, yeah, it was all a conspiracy by Stiltman to manipulate people into accepting his leadership and staying together, right? Tony is appalled. So what's going on in the story is we have Tony encountering all these demonstrations of the dangers of thinking yourself above everyone else, recognizes them for what they are, and yet doesn't apply these lessons when he gets access to cosmic power himself. Does Can't Write Well think Tony is so arrogant that he's functionally retarded? Like, is Tony unable to learn from other people's experiences?
It's almost like some divine force is trying to tell Tony.
Some divine force is trying to tell Tony. Yeah. He thinks he's better than everyone else, right? All right, so the issue ends at the Living Tribunal. He sends Tony in Canada directly to the world ship and side quest. And then the issue 2 is the tour of the world ship, which involves pointless conversation about tourist attractions in Canada, including polar bear conservation. So yeah. I know you guys probably want to talk about that.
I just felt it was weirdly out of place. I feel like Cantwell was trying to do something. So I did some tweets about it where I said, what I think Cantwell is trying to do is he's trying to say Tony is tired and Tony needs a break. He needs some kind of inner peace. So the conversation about the polar bears that's like Tony getting close to peace. How about after we finish this fight, I'll go with you to Canada and look at the polar bears so I can finally have my break after this long hell. But instead of it being about Tony's character, the focus is on the polar bears themselves and weird regional Canadian humor and information. Like, did you know that kids in Canada have curfews because the polar bears might eat them, right? It's not quite the point that Cantwell's trying to accomplish with Tony's personality. Like, I picked up on it, but I think you need to bring that out a little bit more so it doesn't feel like Tony. I guess the other point is that Tony's high as a kite, so he's just starting to ramble about polar bears while high on morphine. But I think Cantwell's deliberately doing the Josh Whedon thing where Josh Whedon says, oh yeah, hit him really hard, do the tragedy, but then bleepy bleep tell a joke, right? So I think that every Marvel fanboy has that quote tattooed on their forehead or something, and then they look in the mirror and read it backwards to do it all the time, because they're always putting silly jokes in the midst of Tony's serious character moments. So I guess props for trying to. Go ahead.
Yeah, Mark Pellegrini calls that rattling the car keys. And yeah, it's really annoying if you do it too much. So
yeah, I think I mean, honestly, Marmaduke, I think you're being too generous to him. At least with the first theory, you know, I don't think it's Tony trying to. I mean, maybe it was supposed to be, but I really don't think it was supposed to be, because he's not talking about how much he wants to go to Canada. He's talking about polar bears eating children, and then he kind of casually mentions that he wishes somebody else was flying his suit. Right, like it sounds more like he's just kind of depressed and bored and flying around and maybe a little bit high. But I do think that the Joss Whedon thing is important. Like that's actually what I was thinking too when I read that. I'm like, oh my god, it's turned into like a Joss Whedon comic or something. You know, it's just filler. It's just
it's got the a lot of Marvel comics have this same flaw. It's Whedon damage, where everybody has to talk like they're in Buffy the Vampire Slayer. Not just in this comic, but like across the Marvel line, we have this issue. You know how people call Gramscian damage? Well, this is Whedon damage in the comics. The other thing I want to say is, if in theory Tony is high on morphine, take it from someone who actually has experience with narcotics and lives with someone who also has experience with narcotics. If you are high on too much morphine, you don't become hyperverbal and disinhibited. You nod, you fall asleep. So it's like Tony's being written like he's on pot, not like he's on morphine.
Yeah, because it's what, it's an opiate, right? So he should be chasing the dragon with a bunch of Chinese guys or something. Not that is a good point.
I mean, like, we know heroin addicts can do some crazy shit, but it doesn't happen when they're high. It happens when they're trying to get high. Then once they actually get their drugs and are able to actually get high, then they just sit there and they sleep until the high wears off, you know? So, it's not really even accurately depicting what morphine addiction is like. And then let's see. Then Korvac arrives, and Canada is killed. Press F for Canada. Yeah, and then I noted this death doesn't really have any impact in reality because no one is that attached to Avro X. Sorry. Just we introduced him a couple of issues ago, and now we're gonna kill him. There's really no emotional impact to that at all.
Hey, you remember Yar?
Yeah.
Anyone remember?
She used to be I read that and I picked it up and I thought, wow, I didn't pick up that Yar was one of the little ones who got killed, right? When you have so for Yar's death, I thought you always have to like zoom in on their face and give them famous last words, you know, a heroic final speech before they go. And she just basically just got like taken out. She's their woman, tough woman, former Kree field commander, and she basically gets killed without much of a big deal being made out of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering if that was like supposed to be a deliberate reference to Star Trek, like the bitch way they killed off Tasha Yar in Star Trek, because that whole issue was almost like a pocket Star Trek episode, right? Like there's been several Star Trek episodes that follow that same basic plot, And of course, you got the character named that. So I don't know. Maybe that's just my autism speaking, but I was wondering if maybe that was a sly little reference to Yar from Star Trek. Bump.
Mm. All right, and then Tony's team arrives. But just before that, Tony is beaten to the brink of death. Issue 13 opens by making me hurl. You just couldn't let us do it without you, huh? Tell you the truth, I don't know if I could do anything without you, Patsy Wallcat.
You are the wind beneath my wings.
Maximum sip moment.
I mean, can I just say, like,
yeah, go ahead.
You know, I'm pretty masculine, right? My pronouns are he, him.
Yes.
But I understand that there are times and places where you want to be, where it's tough to be tender and you want to be nice to the girl that you love. But, you know, being half beaten up and carried by War Machine across the burning deck of a spaceship is not one of those times. Like, come on. Like, I don't think that's just my machismo talking, is it? Right?
No, you're right. Because, well, I looked at that and said, man, you know, Tony's pronouns have become Patsy's bitch. That's his pronoun. Okay. So we have that. Oh, then during the pursuit through Tatu, we have this. Okay, my space friends, this is about to get very real very fast. Go for Korvac. Jim Hammond's obviously being controlled, but do whatever you need to do. Do whatever you need to in order to get him out of the way. I don't have to tell you what happens if Korvac accesses the power in there. And I think my brain is bleeding. I actually like this because the casual way Tony mentions a critical injury here actually jives with this history. So that was another like one moment of, oh yeah, that's actually Tony. He would be like, oh yeah, by the way, guys, my brain's bleeding. Ha ha ha. I don't care, you know. More strange biblical references. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to ask, are you going to go in depth with the biblical references, or because I was wondering what you two's take was on the many rooms in my house thing being interjected there. Is there any support for it, or was it just, hey, I randomly Googled the Bible verse and here it is?
I feel like he's picking Bible verses. So, in my house are many rooms is a promise to the apostles that in heaven there is space for you, right? Like it's a promise of the goodness of the afterlife. So I guess the idea is Korvac is stringing them along his disciples by promising them the goodness of the weird crystal utopia world he's going to create. And the second one I noticed was Korvac giving a speech about that's alluding to Jesus saying that, you know, those who have ears to hear, let them hear. They hear, they listen, they hear, but they do not listen. They see, but they do not understand. Right. So talking about the problem of so Jesus is talking about the problem of proclaiming the kingdom to the Pharisees or to the people and them just not getting it. And I guess the idea is Korvac is trying to give his epic speech on the utopian world he's going to create, and Tony and the others just aren't getting it. I also felt just like even if the biblical allusions were good biblical allusions and connecting to the themes of his story, I also thought they weren't artfully handled. Like you put the evocative quote at the beginning of the story or the end of the story. You don't just drop an evocative quote smack dab in the middle of an action scene. That doesn't work.
Yeah. It didn't really feel like it fit in very well to me. I thought it was just pretentious on Cantwell's part. It was him trying to say, I'm talking about something important here, but just him not being competent enough to actually successfully do it.
Yeah, so kind of like that 2 pages where they're all talking about God and they all just kind of come off like it's like pretentious neckbeard idiots, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because that was my thought too, but I was like, oh, maybe he found some crazy theologian, but no, it's just Cantwell. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We also have Patsy noticing the controller's disc on the back of the Human Torch's neck and successfully removes it. So she gets to be clever, but Tony doesn't. Seems to be a pattern. Basically, everyone except Tony gets to do cool things, but Tony gets to be the incompetent, bumbling simp this entire run, right? We hate most that which we see in ourselves. Implies that Tony is also a cowardly megalomaniac, which is not true. Tony punches the hell out of Korvac. No strategy, once again. But Korvac still accesses the power cosmic. So in desperation, Tony follows him. I'm not enough. So at the end of 13, Tony becomes or jumps into the power cosmic and becomes the Iron God. Because regular Tony is not enough, right?
By the way, "You are enough" is like one of these slogans, right? Like they put on bumper stickers. So "You are enough" is supposed to be like this self-affirmation. Don't let anyone tell you that you are not enough. You have it's an urban progressive substitute towards your life has value. You are enough. So Tony saying "I'm not enough" is probably Cantwell referencing this idea and saying this is Tony's problem. Is inside he's not he doesn't love himself enough, or he's not following. He's incapable of following his heart. So he creates this toxically masculine persona to fix his inner broken heart or something. I'm just spitballing here.
Okay. And then we have issue 14, in which Kent Rightwell gets a tiny bit of credit for trying to recognize that Tony's childhood was not a happy one and trying to approximate Tony's documented self-hatred, but still not really getting it right. And Marm, you reacted to this as, oh, this might be a good character moment here, right? Feeling like I didn't exist, the they didn't see me, no one ever saw me part. That is actually pretty accurate. So I mean, it's close to accurate in the sense that he wasn't really given the sort of love that a child in a healthy family would expect, right? So one little point of credit there. And this bit here, Tony, it's your father. How many times have I told you to change the world? Have you done it yet? And why are you so damn wrong all the time? I mean, that is kind of how Tony would view his father in his own subconscious. So that's pretty accurate. The problem is that Cantwell minimizes what actually happened to Tony when he was a kid. He basically, this is so disappointing. The father issues, the typical childhood traumas, the phallic imagery. Korvac is some scary Alpha Lothario idiot. Is this really all that is percolating in my subconscious? Well, no, actually, not if we're talking about the real Tony. Tony is not just some rich brat with daddy issues. Howard treated him like absolute crap and even started him on the road of alcoholism. So we have this scene from the old comics. This is his dad yelling at Tony saying, "Oh, pin your ears back, you." And well, his mom's actually protective. "No, Howard, you won't lay a hand on him. You can finish dinner without us." So this is him basically threatening to beat Tony and then being alone with his drink, right? We have this bit too. So you see, son, that pi is a special number. If God has sent us a message telling us that he exists, it's in here somewhere. But then we have this little bit here where Tony's crying because he's gotten hurt, and dad says, "It's just a scratch, boy. Quit your carrying on." You don't want to be a sissy now, do you? Stark men are made of iron. So this is what Howard Stark is actually like in the old comics, right? And oh, Howard, boarding school, he's such a sensitive boy. It's for his own good. He needs discipline, Maria. I don't want to go, sir. I want to. Stop being such a coward, boy. You've been coddled by wealth, and it's made you weak. And then the one on this slide is from 313. 313 is an issue of Tony basically at an AA meeting, telling the story of how he became an alcoholic. And this scene, this is Howard actually forcing Tony to drink whiskey so that he can be a man. This happened when he was 8 years old. So there's a ton of evidence that Howard was emotionally abusive at the very least. And in fact, Tony can't even tell the difference between the real Howard and a hell demon summoned by Mephisto. So this is from Legacy of Doom, which was a book that more recently they brought Bob Layton and Michelini back together to write an Iron Man story. And in that book, this is Hell Demon Howard saying, see, I can make armor too. Brilliance isn't enough. You'll never reach your true potential worrying about consequences. You're weak, nothing but a fancy boy. You're no son of mine. And this is Tony thinking, I'd heard it all before, but the pain was still enough to distract me from the physical threat at hand. So this is Hell Demon Howard. And Tony is thinking, yep, this is what my dad would actually say. So it's not a typical childhood drama. He actually had an abusive, alcoholic drunk for a father, right? So it bothers me that Cantwell's minimizing that. And then there's go ahead.
Okay, well, I was gonna say, I mean, this is kind of totally inappropriate. But the first slide that you showed there, did he really have an assistant named Smithers?
Yes.
Was it,
nice.
It's actually called Smithers. Okay, sorry. I just Smithers.
Well, could this have preceded The Simpsons, though, if it's an 80s comic?
Yeah.
285 to 287 was late 80s, so maybe The Simpsons were just starting to get in.
At the same time, but
yeah,
who knows? So basically, he's Monty Burns' son, long lost Monty Burns' son.
Yeah,
it's pretty terrible.
Okay, and then here's another problem with this issue. It gets Tony's motivations wrong. If Tony became Iron Man to be seen, why did he maintain a secret identity for so many years?
That's a fair question. And can I just say I really like the little product placement for Funko Pops there. It was very fun.
Yes. And this part, but this is my time. I have so many ideas. I could fix everything, starting with myself, but that's just the beginning. So it's kind of half right and half wrong. Tony does want to fix things. He does want to make the world better. But the problem is that in the beginning of this issue, Cantwell basically establishes Tony as an egomaniac desperate to make a name for himself so that he could be seen, right? So he's seeking this not out of a, like in Cantwell's view, Tony seeks the power to change the world, not because he actually wants to make things better necessarily, but because he's just an egomaniacal narcissist who thinks that he can arrange the world better than anyone else can, right? Yeah, and now we get to the Iron God section. Yeah, so we were mentioning earlier that in issue 15 specifically, Tony and Korvac are both gods. They're battling each other through time and space essentially, and they're destroying stars, right? As they're doing this, including this one, the star to this one, civilization of sentient aliens, right? And that kind of passes by with no real comment or anything. Like, oops. Right? There's a whole solar system down except for the one survivor, Oopsies. Yeah, so that's basically what issue 15 was. And then issue 16, he returns to Earth and makes everyone in the New York City area geniuses. Consequently, we get an up close and personal look at what a midwit like Cantwell thinks sounds smart.
Oh God, are you? You're not gonna. Okay, yeah, that one's a good one. I like that one.
Yeah. So this is Reed Richards saying after he makes everyone smart. Reed Richards says, I actually think I just became dumber, which Punch almost uses as icon today.
Yeah, well, I mean that's kind of because that was actually what I was thinking. Like the moment he said, like, I made everyone just as smart as me, I'm like, wait, isn't that going to cause problems with Reed Richards? And another thing too, like we've already gone past the part where, like the very start of his Dream God sequence or whatever, but there's a section in there where Tony starts talking about how he wants to approach this whole power cosmic thing from a scientific perspective, right? And he's talking about like making scientific logs and investigating it scientifically.
Yeah, so it's like, when did he? So you said in tweets, when did he become Reed Richards? Basically, yeah,
because he's always been he's the Rain Man guy, right? Like he's the STEM Rain Man. He works on intuition and just being super smart, and he's the engineer. He's not the theoretical science guy, you know, as we saw several times in previous streams, right? You know, he's constantly like, well, you know, I don't really know why it works. It's just, you know, my brain, I'm able to come up with it on the fly, and oh look, I've got to rearrange the positrons in my electro gig, and I've frozen you in place, bad guy, or something like that, you know. So I don't know. I was Reed Richards, I guess, was just on my mind at this point, because it seems like Tony is all of a sudden trying to be like Reed Richards, but
and that's that's not a problem that's unique to this run, I don't think. I think in modern Marvel, there's really been writers have had difficulty distinguishing between the genius characters. They all seem to think that all genius characters should be exactly the same kind of geniuses. So, like, that's why I put in this comic here, because it's not like Tony and Reed could both be geniuses in their respective specialties, right? Instead, we have to have a dick measuring contest that drags Tony down. You know, everyone, all the smart people have to compete, instead of realizing that the smart people are going to have their different fields in which they are smart, and nobody's going to be smart in everything, you know.
I mean, that's kind of true. That, I mean, a lot of smart people, like especially like the really smart people, if they run into like other really smart people, they'll have like smart guy dick measuring contests. So, I could buy that.
The problem with that is that Reed likes Tony and has worked with him before. I mean, they've worked together. So I don't think they, like, in the past, they haven't really seen each other as competition. They've seen each other as colleagues, you know, two equally brilliant colleagues in the fields that they are specialists for, right? Working together to solve problems, the scientist and the engineer, as friends and as a pair, you know.
Well, how have they been since Civil War? Because I know Reed was basically the king douchebag in Civil War. So did they ever like patch things up, or?
Well, they were on the same side in Civil War, so it wasn't like they.
I mean, he's still like he was the guy that kind of made everything go off the rails. And did Tony ever blame him for that, or like is it just like an issue?
No, because at the end of Dark Reign, he erased his memory, so he probably doesn't even remember. That Reed was King Dick. So.
All right, yeah. So I guess it doesn't make sense then.
Yeah, it really doesn't. Yeah. So
I think they kind of explained in Civil War that Reed Richards is like the high school nerd and Tony's like the high school jock. So for Reed, it's like, oh boy, the cool kid likes me. Oh boy.
Yeah, well, that was also I was thinking, like that previous panel where he's talking about like how tiresome it all is and blah 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 when he's beating the crap out of Korvac with the He-Man sword. That got me wondering if that's just Cantwell being salty about jocks too, because he's like, oh, this big alpha boy with the phallic imagery, and I'm like, yeah, this sounds like a nerd that got pushed around and now he's getting kind of gay for bullies or something. But
yeah, and I just want to emphasize again that that's not the entirety of his subconscious. If Cantwell actually knew the real Tony, he would add in a lot of other things into his subconscious, like Ho Yinsen dying at the beginning of his origin and stuff like that as motivating factors, instead of just being the typical spoiled rich guy with his typical spoiled rich guy problems, so like I said, like it's not a complete picture of what's going on in Tony's head. I'm moving on with what Cantwell thinks is smart.
Oh,
I know you guys were tweeting about this. So the kid saying, you guys ever think about how life as we know it is a barely cogent expression of simplistic patterns, and how, given the sheer size of the universe, the activity of the human race is basically indistinguishable from randomized background radiation patterns, which is to say life is essentially the same as non-life? Life is meaningless, kids. IR smart.
I don't see how any of that flows, right? Like, I don't want to try and break down the argument there, but it's so dumb. It's so bad.
Campbell thinks intelligence equals being a fedora. And then Marm tweeted about this one. Tony turns everyone into a gender study major. Are you dating to question my economic latitudes, Lewis, as if I didn't pay close personal attention to our expenditures? Carl, that's not what I'm actually upset about. I'm more concerned about how we're falling into traditional patriarchal roles. Yes, damn those traditional patriarchal roles too.
And when Cantwell writes everybody turning into someone who's as smart as Tony Stark, everybody turns into what people think smart people talk like based on television. Right. So he's actually kind of he's either expressing a cynical view of Tony Stark's intelligence. Tony Stark's not as smart as he thinks he is, or this is what Cantwell thinks intelligence sounds like.
Oh man, I actually really like that first theory. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe he just like accidentally created like a Joss Whedon universe out of
yeah. Well, why can't it be both? Taco Shell commercial dance, like that. He's downplaying Tony's intelligence because he's been doing that all along by not letting Tony actually use the intelligence that he was gifted with, but also him thinking this is how smart people actually talk. Actually, smart people, genuinely smart people. Yeah, no one talks like this casually, says Evie. Yeah, no one talks like this casually. Not even smart people. Smart people, genuinely smart people, know when to pop off the big words and then when to talk like an actual normal human being, right? Actually, the more big words you throw into something, the dumber you sound. Genuinely smart people, when they're writing or speaking, will throw them in when they're appropriate. Not just all the time because, that's what sounds smart,
Insert Jimmy Neutron sodium chloride meme here.
Yeah.
What? Say,
Jimmy Neutron. It's like a YouTube poop clip where Jimmy Neutron explains to a guy working at McDonald's that actually salt is called sodium chloride, and then everybody makes memes where the McDonald's worker explains to Jimmy Neutron how he's completely wrong.
Seems like a meme of a normal comic. Yeah, I was thinking that too. I mean, I actually really liked these pages These were the first time in the entire run that I kind of got interested and perked up, and I was like, oh, okay, I want to read it. It's not good, but as kind of like this absurd Joss Whedon thing, like it's a really well written Joss Whedon comic. I guess that's kind of how I was looking at it. But not a good Iron Man comic, but it got into a nice Joss Whedon-y thing. One thing that I would have liked to have seen though, is instead of having everybody turn really smart and indistinguishably educated, have everyone turn really smart but retain their own personalities and their own intellectual autonomy, right? So instead of having everybody suddenly speaking like, some gender studies major or whatever, have everyone speak as they normally would, but just like super smart version of it, right? Like, like a doctorate, I don't know, any kind of non-gender studies person, right?
Yeah.
Well, Patsy Walker gets to do that specifically, but
yeah.
Well, I mean, she's special though. She's Poochie. Like she needs to have her own time in the sun. So
the theory here, as revealed later, is that Tony is making everyone basically think like him, to be smart like him, right? The problem is this is not how Tony's smart. Like Tony doesn't even talk like this.
Yeah, he really doesn't. He does.
Yeah.
Wait, Hellcat kind of does a little bit, but she's not that bad.
Yeah. Evie says there's a clip from an old PBS Kids show called Word Girl, where she says, "Why would it use a larger word when a less complicated word would suffice?" Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Genuinely good writers and genuinely smart people know when a less complicated word is better, right? Yeah, and I also had this one. If you get too excited about a baseball game, you're a failure. I'm sure Brother Geek, who's a big baseball fan, will not be insulted by this at all.
Yeah, okay. Well, one thing that I will say though is if you spend time around genuinely pretentious arseholes, sometimes they do wind up speaking with too big words and being really pretentious just because they're pretentious arseholes. So
yeah.
Again, having grown up around a university, I've run into many people like that. People who are out to impress you. So that's one of these times where I'm just thinking like, maybe this is just Cantwell's own personal experiences bleeding through, the sort of environments that he's subjected himself to, being pushed out into the world at large.
Right. But as I said a few minutes ago, Tony is not this pretentious. So if this is, if in theory this is supposed, if this is supposed to be Tony is imposing his own style of thought onto the greater New York City area, it even fails at doing that because this is not how Tony thinks. He uses normal words and speaks like a normal person.
It's kind of like, have you guys ever played Oblivion?
No.
It's the prequel to Skyrim.
My roommates played it, so I have a rough reference.
Okay, well the game before it, the game after Morrowind but before Skyrim was Oblivion, and that's the best one in my opinion. But there was a character in Skyrim that speaks with, he technically speaks with malapropisms. Like he says, he uses the wrong word for things. Like he tries to make really long words and make himself sound really smart, but he comes off like a complete idiot. Lord Rugdumph. If you ever get a chance to look him up, like on YouTube or something, I think that was his Rugdumph or something. He's really fun, and that's the kind of thing I was thinking that they could go with. Just have these. these dumb little characters trying to sound super smart and just sounding like idiots, but they didn't know, unfortunately. Missed opportunity.
So so Cantwell also apparently thinks that the newly super intelligent would consider more ordinary jobs to be beneath them. In the case of that reporter, that would actually be true, but for everyone else, the reporter saying, "I'm quitting my job," I was like, yeah, actually, being a journalist is beneath you if you're really smart. But every other kind of job, so I said here, the text states that Tony has made everyone in the tri-state area think just like him. Thus, Cantwell is suggesting that Tony thinks ordinary jobs are beneath him, and also that Tony is a fedora, which, no, Tony is just a non-believer, right? And there's definitely a difference between being a non-believer and being a fedora. So the problem is that the real Tony has displayed such profound respect for his employees over the years that this disdain for the middle and working classes is highly, highly unlikely to be a reflection of Tony's real opinion, to say the least. Oh yeah, and then the X-Men, the Yes Men, all I can say to that is ugh. Because that's definitely Tony does not surround himself with people that just kiss his ass. That's not his character at all. And I'm pretty sure a literal god can handle sorcery, so Doom's immunity to Tony's Yes Men spell makes no sense. Yeah, so the Yes Men, what I mean is that at one point during issue 17, Tony basically snaps his fingers and makes everyone agree with him, so he doesn't have to deal with all their complaining and disagreement, which is not Tony at all, obviously. But Doom, oh yeah, by the way, Doom is here because Patsy decided that the only person who can stop God Tony is Dr. Doom. So Dr. Doom is here, and Dr. Doom has apparently protected all of Tony's team from this Yes Men snap of the fingers here. But they all, when Tony shows up, they all pretend that, yeah, we agree with you just like everyone else, right? Okay, Punchy, here's one of your tweets. So, question: if everyone thinks like Tony now, how come she's still nagging him like Hellcat would? Is Hellcat really just a physical manifestation of Tony's innermost fears, anxieties, and self-doubts? Well, the answer in text is that Doom shields Patsy and Co. from the Yes Man effect. However, if people actually were genuinely thinking like the real Tony, they absolutely would nag him to death because Tony and self-loathing together like peas and carrots. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, because Doom shields her from the Yes Man snap, but she'd already had the Tony Brain snap, right? So that's why I'm wondering. I mean, she was like this even before, so that's why I'm like, yeah, it's probably just the way she is. But if she got like this from the Tony Brain snap, that would actually make a lot of sense, because then that's just she's like the terrible portion of Tony coming out and nagging at him and dragging him down. Like she is the physical manifestation of his addictions and self-loathing and all that all that crap.
Yeah.
He always wanted the Dami Mommy, so the Dami Mommy is unaffected by everybody else's brain chemistry being altered.
Why he's going to marry her? Because he's got horrible mental issues and he can't get away from that horrible voice inside.
And then there's this when Tony starts losing his temper and he says, "I know what they say behind my back, Rhodey. What they said for years, that you wear it better than I do, that it should have been you in the red and gold, not me." So the problem with that, you guys remember this from previous streams? So here's Tony thinking, "Rhodey looks good, smooth, confident. I sometimes forget that he's a top-notch pilot, and that may make him a better Iron Man than I ever was." So the real Tony has already acknowledged that Rhodey could be a better Iron Man than he is, and he's done so without resentment. So Tony doesn't view Rhodey as competition. or as a threat to his so-called ego. He sees Rhodey as an indispensable friend and a deserving hero in his own right. So that's why Record Scratch. And so we talked about that in the previous stream. Tony was basically throughout the back half of Denny O'Neil's Iron Man run was saying all the time, yes, Rhodey deserves to be Iron Man. Rhodey is good as Iron Man. He may even be better than me, right? I saw somebody on Tumblr say, one thing, and what's funny is that the people on Tumblr hate these comics too, which is why I posted that meme once, Punch, where it was the arms clasping. Yeah.
They hate the new comics or the old ones? The new ones?
The new comics.
They hate the new comics. Why do they hate the new comics? Is it just because they're bad comics, or is there like some really, really terrible?
They all ship Tony Stark and Captain America or something.
Oh, is that what it is?
Well,
that's been a trend on Tumblr.
They do that, but actually, they hate these comics for a lot of.
Hang on, Tumblr is still around?
It got imploded a bit when they banned porn, right? Yeah, so then that's when all of the horny, what do you call it, gender nonconformists came to Twitter.
Yeah, that's when they all kind of left. So there is actually still a Tumblr. That's weird. That's
yeah. But I wanted to jump in and say that a lot of the Tumblr folks hate these comics for a lot of the same reasons I do. Some people on Tumblr have actually read a lot of Iron Man comics and realized that this is not how Iron Man is typically portrayed, right? And one of them was saying, sometimes I dream about, the real Tony from Denny O'Neil's run coming forward through time and kicking this Tony in the face. Well, yes, Rhodey's a better Iron Man than I am. I've always said that, Yeah. So, and they also, because they're, tankies and gender specials, they've also said that, Cantwell is trying too hard to be woke and failing. So,
yeah, you can never win.
You can never win. Yeah.
Yeah. You heard about all those people walking out on Disney now too, because they didn't quite toe the line enough.
The Florida law. Yeah.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff. Like every single time. Like I could see maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, people not quite catching on to the fact that it's never enough and that you'll always lose in the end. But at this point, come on, just we're so screwed. The West is dead.
Ron Paul meme here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And in the slideshow here, insert that escalated quickly meme here. You both noticed it. That I love how Tony goes from 0 to murder all my friends in the space of about 3 panels. Yes, that escalated quickly. Or as Marm says, Cantwell's trying to stuff an entire arc into the 2 issues following the climax. It all comes across as rushed and mean-spirited. Yes, correct. I get that he's trying to show that Tony has gotten mad with power, but still, this is like seeing Mr. Rogers suddenly scream and kick the family dog. Yeah. So what happens here at the end of issue 17 is that Tony ends up killing basically everyone in a rage because they won't do what he says, right? And this is where we end. Yeah.
It's
Tony is killed.
Can I just say, Ari, the Mr. Rogers thing, I don't want to sound like I'm saying Tony can't kill everyone. I think it might be possible to have a story where Tony winds up going off the rails and murdering everyone and killing everyone and oh God, look what he's done. That's fine, but you have to earn that, right?
Yes.
You have to earn the giant murder. It's like
yes.
Oh God, what the Jim Carrey TV show Kidding. I don't know if any of you guys have seen that, but it's basically like a parody of Mr. Rogers, and it gets pretty dark. Like he doesn't actually kick the family dog, but there are like out of character Mr. Rogers things. But they spend time building up this idea that Mr. Rogers is a bit unhinged and he's dealing with this trauma and he's going mad with power and blah blah blah. And oh my god, now at the end of this story we have the payoff where he flips out and runs over a guy with his car because he was trying to give his son marijuana, right? It isn't like, oh hey guys, I'm Mr. Rogers, I'm gonna run this guy over with my car now, right? It's you got to build up to it. It's god.
It's also been played as a joke for the past issue or so. Like, haha, everyone's as smart as Tony Stark, so the world's going crazy. That's like a Saturday morning cartoon. Oh, what a silly problem. How will the superheroes solve this silly problem? Plot. Now we're switching tonal whiplash to, we're dead serious about this being like a legitimate world-threatening problem.
Right. And now Tony is finally just as bad as Korvac because he's acting like a god himself and trying to control everybody, right? So we have at the end, Tony has killed everyone, including Rhodey, but Patsy has talked him down with the power of her lure. Kill me now. I think that this is going to be undone in the next couple of issues, because I think I really suspect that before Tony gives up his cosmic godhood, he's going to snap his fingers and bring everyone back to life. If that doesn't happen, that's going to be even more of a problem, because how do you come back from that? But still, the fact that this happened is it's a kill me now moment. But here's the good news. In a few issues, Tony is proposing to Patsy. Doesn't that just fill you with glee?
Yeah.
So is it going to be a proposal
marriage a patriarchal institution, though?
Yeah.
You should live in an open relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe that'll be the twist. Maybe that's how they get out of it. Like, he proposes and then she's like, no, that's a tool of the patriarchy. We need to move off to a commune and have the government tell us when we can procreate. And he's like, yes dear, or something.
Yes, dear. More simping. Yeah. I will, on my channel, of course, keep people updated on what actually happens with issue 20 in May. But because that's where it's going to happen, is in issue 20.
When's the next issue?
The next issue is coming out next week, I think, unless they've changed the schedule, which they have. I've noticed that a couple of times it'll be on a schedule for a particular week, and they're like, and then they'll be like, oops, nope, we're pushing it back. Like, so as last time I checked, 18 is coming out next week. So
and then 19 at the beginning of next month, and then 20 at the end of the month, or
19 is going to come out in April, I think, towards the end of the month, and then 20 is coming out in May.
Oh, okay.
I don't know exactly when May. I don't know exactly when in May, but I think it's probably going to be towards the end of the month as well.
Oh, it's still March, isn't it? Yeah. That's
yeah.
God.
And and the good news is, in June we're getting another Hellfire Gala again.
Oh boy.
That's something completely not Iron Man related. At least they're confining it to one issue this time, but still, I don't know what convinced them that last year was such a good idea. Let's do it again.
Good luck.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy that just to rubberneck at the cringe.
Fashionistas.
If I've got the money.
Well, okay, and it's also this weird phenomenon where it's superheroes as experimental costume cosplay showcase rather than superheroes as heroes. Yeah.
So there's some stuff. Oh, and there's also going to be, I believe in June, there's going to be an annual that's Iron Man Hellcat. So we're gonna get more Iron Man Hellcat and an extra
We're going
issue
all
in
in.
June. Yep.
So she's going back to the romance comics then, basically. It comes full circle.
Okay,
Back to conservatively dressed romance comics girl.
Yeah.
Will her mother ask to write a comic book about it, though? That's the question.
Yeah. I mean, you've seen my theory, right? My theory on Twitter. I know I've DM'd about it, and I had like a whole thread on it as well.
Yeah. So now we come to our closing thoughts, and I'll let you guys go first before I click through my bullet points.
Cantwell's capable of making you think he's going to do something interesting and fun for a few pages in a row. Sometimes this is his longest record before he before he ever. When we were first going through this, I kept thinking maybe he can land the plane. Maybe he can land the plane, and he's got basically Joseph Joestar's record for landing planes without crashing. I think the theme of Cantwell's run is it is not enough to just when writing a character like Tony, make it all a meta commentary on intelligence itself. I feel like this also might be a problem where superheroes need to grow up. And a lot of these older superheroes have had their coming of age story. So maybe it's not the time to do another coming of age story. Maybe it's time to start treating them like characters who've
Adults.
kind of overcome they've overcome the main problems of their younger life. Tony's overcome the problem of alcoholism, and it's now a daily struggle for him, but he's not the dumb drunk anymore. It's time to start letting them have grown-up problems. Like I think Tony should be married with kids at this point. So
I absolutely believe that too, just not with Patsy,
Yeah.
Not with Patsy as she's being currently written. Let me amend that a little bit. Maybe I've seen no interaction of Tony with the old Patsy, so it's hard to say how that would work if old Patsy was the character here. But definitely not with new Patsy.
Ultimate subversion of expectations would be they're married a few years later, and Patsy's just a happy stay-at-home mom with all of Tony's kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that would be, probably the most likely outcome. It's not the outcome that I would write or that I would want to see, but I think that might be, because Tony. I mean, again, we went over Tony's background with his parents, right? And his horrible dad. So, I think many people maybe are assuming that Tony wants to find someone like his mom, right? Like some nice waifu, some nice mummy waifu who can coddle him and keep him safe and he can feel safe around. But maybe what he's actually looking for is like a mean daddy waifu, right? Like some abusive, alcoholic, drunk waifu, metaphorically drunk waifu. And maybe that's why he's going for Patsy, because she can make him feel as crap as his father did or something. Keeps lecturing him on what a pansy he is and how he needs to shape up or get sent out to boarding school or whatever. Check your privilege, Tony. I'm going to privilege boarding.
Stop being a cowardly fancy boy.
Yeah. Stop being a cowardly privileged white male, Tony.
Yeah.
You got to non-binary up, Tony. Put some hair on your chest.
Yeah, and I actually honestly believe that that could actually be a problem that Tony has, is picking someone who can actually be in a healthy relationship with him. And
yeah, I mean,
we could have a story that covers that. The problem is, I don't think Cantwell thinks this is unhealthy, not based on how he's been quoted in articles about this run. So Evie says, Evie says, I cannot believe they turned Hellcat into his abusive father. Yeah. And Warzord says, "Can we get Hellstorm to bust up the wedding? That would be awesome."
Yeah, I mean, I think there are ways that you could salvage this run. Again, my thought is just we have a big reveal at the end where it turns out this entire storyline, possibly even all of woke Marvel, has just been a romance comic written by Hellcat, like the original Hellcat from way back in the romance comic days, right? Like she's grown up. She's gone to college. She's now an adult, and just like her mom, she's working in the comic book industry. Only now she's writing these stories about grown-up Hellcat having grown-up adventures with Iron Man and things. And I think there's ways that you could do it, and like kind of like, oh, it was all a dream segment, which is usually a crappy storyline. But this has been a mostly disappointing storyline as it is. So, I don't know. I think that would be the most reasonable way to salvage the run. Maybe he can land the plane. I don't know. Like Marmaduke said, there were some moments that I genuinely enjoyed. Oddly enough, the stuff that I enjoyed the most was the stuff that had absolutely nothing to do with the main storyline. That was just kind of silly and dumb, like the big wheel
pizza.
Pizza and the guy trying to solve traffic problems, right? And that's something that I think, like with Squirrel Girl, for example, like Ryan North's Squirrel Girl. That's got that kind of silly Billy irreverent humor. I think that's what Zach called it, right? Silly Billy humor.
Yeah, silly Billy. Yeah.
But I think,
oh my gosh, so random. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think in the case,
I'm so random. Yeah.
Yeah. It's that kind of stuff, like the random silly Billy stuff. And I think in Squirrel Girl's case, like, it does kind of work. In Iron Man, it doesn't. That's not what I'm looking for. But it's maybe a little stronger, ironically or not. It's stronger than the actual storylines in this run. Again, I do like giving writers the benefit of the doubt, even if they've proven themselves to be crap. Maybe there's a way to salvage it, but I really do get the impression that Cantwell isn't familiar with Tony Stark. He's maybe watched the movies, but didn't really get much out of them. And he's mostly just writing about his own miserable existence as, a wage clerk at Marvel right now. And it's it's like watching a man sitting on a couch trying to talk to his therapist, but only in comic book form. It's kind of sad in a way. But what about you, Right Geek? What would your thoughts be?
Okay, so my bullet points say, overall, Cantwell seems to be writing, and I already said this, but Cantwell is writing Tony as a tech sector lizard, or a really, really dumbed down version of MCU Tony, not the real Tony as conceived by Stan Lee and company. Additionally, he clearly hasn't read, at least not closely, any Iron Man comics written prior to 1998, if he's read any Iron Man comics at all. I mean, Punch, your theory that pretty much he's familiar with the movies, but not that familiar, that's a pretty solid theory, because there doesn't seem to be any connection to that deeper underlife of Tony Stark. All he knows is the billionaire playboy, and not all the depths that exist underneath the character. Cantwell has apparently claimed in interviews that he loves Tony, but apparently he only loves him as a punching bag and target of deconstruction. I don't really get any sense that he loves Tony for real. The interior art, we did talk about that, is decent, though sometimes lacking in dynamism. Whose fault is that? It's hard to tell. The Alex Ross covers are eye-catching. Wish they weren't being wasted on this shit story. That I noted. Poor Alex Ross. Yeah, poor Alex Ross. He's Marvel's designated put lipstick on that pig artist, it seems. Like all the bad comics have Alex Ross covers. And that's not Alex Ross's fault, but it's definitely the company saying, we're going to try to make people buy this crap by putting Alex Ross on the front of it, you know? Yeah. This now it's funny you mentioned Squirrel Girl because this is my next bullet point. This may be a shocker, but I want to switch Cantwell out for Ryan North.
Oh yeah, there we go.
Now, and the reason why I say that is not because I want Ryan North to write Squirrel Girl.
Yeah,
because I want Ryan North to write. I want Ryan North to write Darkhold Iron Man because apparently he's capable of that. You know, so and he seems to like even in the Squirrel Girl comics when Iron Man shows up, it seems like Ryan North has actually a genuine appreciation for that character. So if we can't get somebody legendary like Bob Layton, who's still alive, whom I follow on Twitter, then why not get a wage cut like Ryan North to do it? And I know that everyone else in comics Twitter is going to be like, no, because all they basically know about Ryan North is Squirrel Girl. But honestly, I think he could do it. I think you could, based on Darkhold Iron Man, I think you could actually write a good, serious Iron Man comic if you gave him a chance.
Okay, well, I was going to ask, is comics Twitter really that hard against Ryan North now? Because I know I remember when Ryan North first started out as Squirrel Girl, there was a lot of pushback against him, and I was kind of like, because I was like an old school dinosaur comics fan from like way back in my college years and even before then. But I know I've spoken to several people candidly. Like I won't name names just in case they get based canceled or whatever. But it seems like several people involved in the comics, like the comics Twitter world, in comics YouTube world, and just indie comics in general, do have a fondness for Ryan North and what was her name, Erica Henderson or whatever. Has there been like a reevaluation of Ryan North, or do people still not like him very much?
At least the people I follow. Yeah, the people I follow still don't like him that much.
Okay.
Because recently he got announced as possibly being involved in another secret invasion story, and the people I follow are like, "Oh no, not Ryan North," because they're all thinking Squirrel Girl, you know?
Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, he's gonna make.
Yeah. Well, the thing that I would say, like, I mean, Ryan North, because I actually think I had this conversation with Marmaduke, like way back in the day when he first started out. But Ryan North doesn't really seem like the kind of guy who's super into superhero comics, right? Like he's not a superhero comic guy. He's like a weird kind of like a good Joss Whedon comic book, like a comedy, irreverent comedy comic kind of guy. So in that case, maybe he might not be. He might not be suited for the type of storylines that people want to see. But I think he can do a good job. I do think he is a good writer, and I do think he does his homework, right? Like he actually does sit down and take the time to work things out. It's not just him sitting there with a bottle of Jack Daniels and a whole bunch of mental issues, spouting about the jocks that beat him up and the girls he wished would come around and lecture him and beat him up a bit. But I don't know. I'd be okay with him on him.
Yeah, but like I said, when they put out the Darkhold Iron Man late last year, and I read it, and I was like, this is the same guy who wrote Squirrel Girl, so he definitely has it in him. I think he just needs to be given the opportunity.
Should we do that one at some point? Is that worth checking out, or is it?
Yes, I think we should.
Okay.
Although I have a video on my channel already. If you guys want to look at it, where it was just my quick, like right after I read it reaction, where I basically squee over it for about 15 minutes. But Yeah, at some point we should do that. Well, I think we were talking about at the end of the last stream, we were talking about doing a stream where it was just a collection of one shots that I thought were good one shot stories, you know. Yeah, and that would be one of them. So
okay, yeah, just think of a list, or maybe do some good ones and some bad ones, or something. You know, just whatever you want to do. Just any kind of one shots that might be notable for some reason.
Yeah, yeah. I know that I think Warzord said last time do Doom Quest, which is Doctor Doom and Iron Man in the times of King Arthur. I definitely want to do that one because that one's pretty good. Legacy of Doom, that Hell Demon panel was from Legacy of Doom. That's a good one to do. Yeah, I've got other ones. There's other ones I can pull up too. Yeah. So basically, in closing, honestly, it's fucking disappointing. or as Punch puts in his icon there, I hate it. Thanks, I hate it.
I liked both of them. Like, there's little moments that you can clip that are very meme worthy. The I hate it. It's the weird looks in the guys' faces. There's a Tintin scene where Korvac suddenly channels Captain Haddock. You know, the pizza thing and the "it's making me dumber" thing. So there's little moments that we can pull.
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, what one other thing I was going to say too, because you'd mentioned like the Alex Ross covers, and I was actually kind of surprised because a couple of weeks ago there was a big controversy on Twitter about whether Alex Ross was actually good or not, and I hadn't even realized that there were any people in comics Twitter or comics YouTube or wherever that didn't like Alex Ross. So you know, I don't know if you had any comments on that, or if that
did Matsy start that, or did he just contribute to that?
I think he may have started it. He started it by saying he was going to get canceled, and then he wound up getting canceled. But then a whole bunch of people came to his defense, and then it turned into like a whole big thing. And I wound up disagreeing with him and saying that Superman should be basically subjected to aniconism, right? Like he should not be depicted in human form. He should only be shown as like a ball of light or a bolt of thunder coming down from the heavens or something. But yeah, it's a weird autistic thing going on. So I don't know if you, Right Geek, had any opinions on that, or you, Marmaduke, or if that would be.
I've just never been the biggest Alex Ross fan, right?
Oh,
like my thought is always, okay,
at two,
but never like get excited and say, oh boy, I must collect Alex Ross covers, right? And I guess like I think Matt C's argument was he thinks Alex Ross is over reliant on photo reference, and I wasn't sure. Like it looked to me like if you're a realist at any level, photo reference is going to be incorporated into your work. I just feel like Alex Ross's work is all about the wow factor of, look, it's realistically 3D painted superheroes. And I don't know, I feel like the magic of heroes is that superheroes is the dynamism of heroes, not necessarily the detail work of, you know, the stitches on their costumes. So that's my little quibble with Alex Ross, but I actually didn't know how big the Twitter argument got about it.
It may have just gotten big because I was egging them on, but I do that sometimes. But yeah, it was actually quite a few people weighing in, and I've seen more of that kind of stuff too, like digging around. So I don't know, maybe that might be worth doing, like doing some Alex Ross stuff on a stream as well. I'm still in the pro. Yeah.
I'm like I'm with Evie. Like I can understand like some people would say, too much reliance on photo refs, or not enough like movement, too stiff. But I don't know. I still like his art. I'm still on his side too. You know.
Yeah, I mean, because he's basically carrying this Iron Man run at this point. Like he's the one.
For me, yeah, for me, he definitely is. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
basically
it's
like for me. The only reason to buy it is for the Alex Ross covers. So
the cover. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, they are really really good covers. Actually, did he do the one where Tony was poking Rhodey in the butt? Or
yes, he's done all of them for this run.
oh, well, so there you go. You can if you look around, I forget which issue it is, but he does one of the covers where Tony is poking Rhodey in the butt and sparks are flying out. So
the things you notice, Punchy, the things you notice.
Alex's recent Marvel stuff is better than his DC stuff.
Yeah.
Possibly. We'll save that for a different stream, I guess, if you want. Maybe we could do like Alex Ross covers or something, and in addition to the comics. Because I know you really do like Alex Ross, don't you, right, Geek? Because you post him like every day.
Yeah.
And he is. I love him a lot, but
yeah. So anyway, this is we've come to basically the end of what we plan to talk about in this stream. So does anyone have any final questions or comments that they'd like to offer before we log off for the night?
Kind of a tragic letdown from the Demon in a Bottle and the Denny O'Neil run.
Yeah.
I felt bad for Kermit. Poor frog guy. He never really got. He got that one little moment where he kicks the dude in the face. And of course, Rhodey too. Like Rhodey actually had some really interesting things to do in this comic. I mean, it may just be me being biased because I like Rhodey. But you know, I do genuinely think that he had like he was the most positive character, and he was the most interesting when he appeared in the comic, which wasn't very often. But I thought that.
Well, I made that comment. I made those comments too. Like, oh, Rhodey gets to be a badass. Oh, Rhodey gets to be smart. You know.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't get a lot of screen time. When he does, he's well utilized. So maybe points for woke Marvel on that respect.
Yeah.
Fortunately, you had all the rest of the characters be complete crap. So shame for that. But
I like that you said when he showed up, because that was actually something, Marm, if you recall, that I was complaining about in some of our earlier streams talking about this comic, was where is Rhodey? Like, it seems like his best friend should be here at this moment, right? So, until they brought Rhodey in, it's like, oh, he finally remembered Rhodey existed. Like,
yeah, well, I mean, you need a lot more time to flesh out the backstories of the space friends and all the wonderful adventures the space friends get into for the 5 minutes before they all get brutally murdered.
Okay, well, I think we will bring this stream to a close. So thank you to Evie and Warzard for being our live viewers today. And thank you to anyone who will be listening to this stream later. As always, I appreciate you being my audience for my extreme Iron Man autism. And I hope that you all come around for our next Iron Man stream. Yes, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you.
Hopefully something less deconstructionist than this one.
Or maybe more dumb.
Or maybe more deconstruction, yeah. Yes, thank you to Number one Marmaduke fan and Punch Machine for being willing to read this cringe. Hopefully they don't hate me now that I have subjected them to this.
Well, can I just say that there was one panel where Foxy Brown mentions My Little Pony, and that made it all worthwhile to me.
Yeah.
I was like, I know what that is. I get that's a reference to a thing I've seen before. So I was that.
Yes. But anyway, thank you very much. And I hope you all have a pleasant rest of your evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.